Now?
Yeah, there's like a delay between when it tells us versus when it actually shows up, but we're good.
Okay. So hi, everyone. I am calling the advisory committee meeting to order at 7:32 p.m. on April 13th, 2022. So we're going to jump right in because we've got a lot of people waiting to join us. All right, so let's approve the minutes from April 6th quickly. So Claire had sent them out a couple days ago. I sent some revisions today, so you should have got revised copies. So it's already got my comments on it. So I will be quiet and let you guys edit further. So Eric, any other comments on April the 6th?
I had no comments on the 6th.
AP?
No comments.
Mr. Martell?
No comments.
Okay. Marcy?
No comments.
All right, so AP?
I move that we accept the minutes from the 24th as written.
The 6th.
Second.
The
6th,
6th.
sorry.
Okay, so do it again.
I move that we accept the minutes from the 6th as written.
Second.
Roll call vote. Eric?
Aye.
AP?
Aye.
Timothy?
Aye.
Marcy?
Aye.
And Cook is aye. So Claire 5-0 on April 6th minutes. We're not going to do March 24th tonight. We just got the second meeting with the select board. We're using their minutes and they're done. So Claire did send them out. So we'll do those at our next meeting. Okay, so the only other thing to do before we call everybody over is I sent everybody a letter. Remember, the superintendent, when he was here, asked us to write a letter to Senator Eldridge requesting more state aid for public education. So I circulated the letter. I know I sent it today. I think I sent it another time. So did everybody have a chance to read it? It's a pretty quick letter. Because I can pop it up if you didn't.
Can you pop it up?
Yep. All right, can I share my screen
No, sorry, Kathy.
now?
You're good.
Everybody see it?
I see your Zoom webinar,
Like your
your
email.
your email for the panelist link.
Now? All right, here we go again. You would think after 2 years I'd have this down to a science, but I don't. Okay. Now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's only the one page.
Just
Okay.
make it a little bit bigger.
All right. Now?
Yeah.
Okay, so the 4 bullet points are exactly what Greg Martineau asked us to say. So, and he's looked at the letter, he thinks it's good. So he's already given his stamp of approval on this letter. So those are the 4 things the school committee would like to see the state increase funding for. So I just reiterated that and basically made the case that, you know, the paltry increase that Baker is proposing doesn't come close to keeping up with inflation. I mean, they announced it yesterday, it was 8.5% year over year, March to March. So anybody have any changes they want to make to this? Is it good as written? What do you want to do to it? Assuming you're okay sending it.
I would just change the AC at the end to Southborough Advisory Committee.
I will. That was just my shorthand, so I will. I will.
I don't have any changes, Kathy.
And remember, we've got a vacancy. That's why it's only going to him. Carolyn Dykeman hasn't been replaced yet, so we've got 1 rep right now. Marcy, any changes you would like to make in this letter?
No, I read it, Kathy. No changes, and I support sending it, so it looks good.
Okay. I'm going to make sure the select board know we've done this too in case they want to send their own. It can't hurt. Eric, any changes? You'd like to make any edits?
I mean, I think it looks great, Kathy. I think in the effort of expediency, I think this is very solid. My only comment would be that you very clearly referenced the impact to the real estate tax levy. I think if we had a very simple percentage change or a metric to define that, right? Put a number behind it. To
I can do
illustrate the
that.
change. To see the Southborough, that might be a nice call out. That'd be my only comment.
Okay, so I can do that. Can I have the permission to do that without showing this to you again? I just got to go back and look at it and see what it is. So I think it's 5 something. So I can put that in there.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if this is the right approach or not, but I think if we look at the potential percentage change without our estimation in terms of property evaluations, like we've sort of reconciled a little bit. I don't know. I'm just trying to think how we can very quickly illustrate how big of that change that is to the average taxpayer in a simple metric would be.
I agree. I just don't want to bog down the letter with too much detail because you won't read it. You want it to be read. So that's why it's 1 page. So you can usually get a 1-page letter read and not have people glaze over. So I don't want to put too much detail in it. I mean, you should get it. They know how small the state aid increases have been the last few years. I mean, they just, they get it. They're paying the inflation too. Everybody sees it with everything you're buying. So he will get this as far as the premise for it. So I can add 1 sentence and basically say what that increase is.
Yeah, that's it. I think that'd be great. But no, I think it was great, and I don't feel the need to see another version of it.
All right. So AP, can you make a motion to approve the letter as written, except for the edit I'm going to add for what Eric just said, and so that we can go ahead and get it out the door this week?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Roll call vote. Eric,
Aye.
AP,
Aye.
Tim,
Aye.
Claire, excuse me, Marcy,
Aye.
and Cook is aye. So Claire, 5-0 to approve the letter as edited with Eric's edit in there. Okay. All right. So that's what we've got for the moment. So we're going to bring over both the planning board and the select board to discuss the planning board's 2 sponsored articles. So Eric, do you know who everybody is? Let's see. Let's see. 1, 2,
AD, I've got the planning board. I'm gonna need help with there. I'm not familiar.
okay, so it's Marnie Houlihan, it's Mimi Luttrell. That's all I see so far. I don't know. Don Morris is supposed to be here, and I'm not sure if he may be. So it's not Kevin Miller and it's not Debbie, but it's definitely Marnie. There she is. There's Mimi. Okay, so welcome everyone. So select board's got a quorum. Yep, they've got 3. And let's see, Mimi, I don't think you guys have a quorum yet. Okay, all right, so we'll watch. If Don's supposed to be here, he told me he was coming. So when and if he gets here, we'll stop and let you guys call your meeting to order. So Chelsea, are you going to call your meeting to order? So I don't see Lisa.
Yep. So I'm going to call the select board meeting to order at 7:40 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you. So welcome everybody. So Mimi is going to lead the discussion on the trees article number 27. And she asked if she should start with an introduction, big picture, and I said absolutely. I don't remember select board. I guess you guys probably have already met with them. This is our first time to actually meet with planning board. So not sure what questions select board has. I think ours is going to have quite a few. So Mimi, why don't we just turn it over to you and you take it from here.
Thank you very much for having us tonight. Can I share my screen?
Yeah, just one moment, Mimi. You should be good to go.
Okay. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay. So there are many reasons to protect public shade trees, in addition to the fact that it's required by Mass General laws. There are economic, environmental, and of course, aesthetic reasons. In Massachusetts has a very long history of public shade tree protection going back to 1896, where the powers of the tree warden were enumerated, provisions for protecting trees, disallowing cutting and removal, and requiring hearings prior to the removal of public shade tree. Then in 1899, all towns in Massachusetts, towns and cities were required to have tree wardens. Currently, Mass General Law, Chapter 87 and Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 15C govern public shade trees. Chapter 87, like its predecessor, outlines the responsibilities of the tree warden, procedures for protecting public shade trees, requires hearings, and in addition, provides procedures for planting public shade trees and penalties for violating the law. Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 15C requires additional collaboration with the planning board and the tree warden for public shade trees on scenic roads. In Southborough, back in the 70s, at town meetings, all non-numbered roads in the town were designated as scenic roads, furthering our commitment to protect public shade trees. And then in 2019, town meeting adopted a trees bylaw to formalize our commitment to follow Chapter 87 and Chapter 40, Section 15C. Yet we still don't have a process in place to accomplish following these sections of Mass General Law. So this proposed bylaw clarifies the town's responsibilities under Chapter 87 and Chapter 40, Section 15C, and it creates a clear process for the protection of public shade trees, the public, and the planting of public shade trees. What it does not do is it does not infringe on personal property rights. The bylaw only applies to public shade trees, which are trees in the public right-of-way, which are public property. It does not impede the removal of trees that are an eminent hazard to persons or property. And it doesn't create any new regulations. It follows Mass General Law requirements that have been in place since the 1800s in Massachusetts. So I've had a lot of questions on what the public right-of-way is. So when laying out roads, the layout is a certain number of feet, but only a portion of that layout is required to be paved. And in the unpaved portion, there are sidewalks or curbs, grass, trees, and that is the section that the public shade trees reside in. In Southborough, in most residential roads require a 50-foot layout, and only 24 feet of which is required to be paved. So that's all we're talking about. We're not talking about trees in people's yards or just in the public right-of-way, which are public trees which belong to us all. The other question I've had is about the drip line, because there's a section in the bylaw that requires a permit from the tree warden to do construction or demolition within the drip line. And this shows what the drip line is. So it's the circle straight down from the outer reaching branches of the tree. And the reason to protect that, as this graphic shows, is that the roots closest to the tree are the support roots. And if those are destroyed, the tree becomes unstable and falls over. And then the roots out from there are the feeder roots, and that's how the tree gets all its water and nutrition. So if those are destroyed, the tree will starve and die. So the reason for protecting the drip line is to protect the public shade tree and keep it alive. So that is what I have. Are there any questions?
So Chelsea, I've been told, but it's secondhand, that the select board has some issues with possibly the legality of the article, but maybe it's a different article. Is this the one that someone has an issue with?
I think there were questions around what town council's review of this was. And there were some questions around some of the components of the article.
So you want to start there, since you guys have delved a little bit further into this than we have at this point, so we can see what your issues are?
Sure. Does anybody on the select board want to go first on that? Andrew, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't see your hand.
Just one quick comment I would make is based on the presentation. I spent a lot of time reviewing, and I agree. Most of it kind of fleshes out what's already in existing law. The part that I think, and I'm interested in whether you agree with this. The part that is new is it creates a permitting scheme, right? So at the municipal level, if someone wanted to remove a tree within the public way, they would need to get a permit, right? And there would need to be a new permitting scheme set up, new forms created, and fees for getting permission to do work in the right of way. I understand that right now you're really not supposed to do any work within the right of way unless the tree warden approves of it. But the state law doesn't have a permitting scheme. What would be new here is setting up a permitting scheme.
So the state law does speak to you can't, cut, trim, or remove a public shade tree without a permit from the tree warden. And yes, it would require us to set up a process because we don't currently have one.
Yeah, so it's actually putting some more teeth into the state law, putting in place a scheme to make sure that as best possible, the law will actually be followed. Because now if someone takes down a tree within the public right of way, you can say, look, clearly you're supposed to get a permit for that, and you didn't. And there would be some consequence to that.
Correct. I think, well, in my mind, the first step is once this article passes with flying colors, is to create some education on public shade trees in the public right of way, so people in town are aware, because I don't think people are.
Eric, can you bring over Don Morris, and then Mimi, or Don's going to have to call this meeting to order?
En route.
Hi, Dawn. I think you need to call us to order because we have a quorum now.
And you're muted.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Planning board is now in session. Can you see me?
Don't see you, hear you.
You can't see me.
No,
That's a good thing.
No, it's not.
I don't know about that.
So welcome, Don. We started a little bit early, so Mimi she made a brief presentation, which was helpful, and then now select board are asking questions?
Yes, I've been watching for like maybe the last 3 minutes, and I just came home. So actually, when I was at the town hall earlier today, I looked at the agenda and I thought that other things were going to be at 7:30 and then slide into us. But apologize for being a little bit late.
That's okay. We said 8 o'clock, but everybody was, at least most people were there, and I just didn't want to keep people waiting. So we got done with our business faster than I thought we would.
Excellent.
Okay. All right. So Andrew, are you going to continue?
Which Andrew were you addressing?
AD, sorry, AD.
Nope. I just had that one question / comment.
So Chelsea, back to you to control.
Yeah, so Marty, do you want to go next?
Sure. First, a clarifying question. I've got 3 versions of the bylaw in front of me. And one of them has questions or comments from Andrew, including comments relating to one of my questions, which is the public shade tree definition. And Andrew Dennington, recommended a change to that language. And I guess my question is, has it been made?
Yes, we accepted that at our last planning board meeting.
All right, specifically to the language that Andrew suggested?
Exactly as he had written, yes.
Okay, my question about public shade trees is gone then. The tree warden, I took a look at maybe the bylaws that you sent us from, I think it was Lexington, Grafton, Provincetown, somewhere else, Westfield, as well as a bunch of others. And this proposed bylaw gives the tree warden an extraordinary amount of power. Now, I understand there's a Massachusetts provision that sort of does the same thing. But what most of the other towns have done is they have put a control on that. And most of them have done it with a separate committee. Some of them have done it by designating, coordinating approval responsibility to the select board. Now, my reading of the way this is written is that somebody who's appointed to be the tree warden can enact regulations, fees, even policies without anyone's approval. Am I wrong about that?
That's correct, in keeping with Mass General laws, which allows them to create regulations.
I understand that it allows them, but no one else in Southborough in any capacity has that sort of authority.
The building commissioner creates fees that aren't approved by anyone.
I think, and maybe I'm wrong, is Mark on this? I think those fees come through us.
You approve the building fees?
Yeah, we approve
Yes.
everything.
Okay.
I mean, the idea that presumably, I mean, in the past, the tree warden has been somebody in the Department of Public Works. They've been an employee of the town of Southborough. And this will get to some of my other questions about where this person is going to be situated. But before getting to that, I mean, presumably the tree warden could be, at least the way this is written, could be an independent contractor who enters into an agreement with the town of Southborough, lives wherever, and yet has the authority to promulgate regulations for 10,000 people in Southborough, permitting processes for the people of Southborough, set fees for the folks of Southborough without any required approval, authorization, sign off by anyone. And I, for one, can't abide that.
Marty, so technically the selectmen have to approve it.
Where does it say that, Andrew?
Mass General Law, Chapter 87, Section 2.
It doesn't say that.
He may make regulations for the care and preservation of public shade trees and establish fines and forfeitures of not more than $20 in one case for violation thereof, which when posted in one or more public places and in towns, when approved by the selectmen, shall have the effect of town bylaws.
That is absolutely right. What you've read is correct. It would have the effect of a town bylaw, but it's not required to, and particularly under the language of this, it's not required in order to have effect. It becomes, I mean, the same way we have an awful lot of regulations, and Mimi just referenced the fees that the building department does. Those aren't a bylaw. Those are set by officials authorized by the selectmen. The way the statutory, and I'll grant you, and I'm not surprised it comes from the 19th century. I will grant you that the statutes are not clear, but what Section 2 does is it allows what the tree warden does to become bylaw, but it doesn't require that a bylaw be enacted in order for fees, regulations, policies to have the effect of law. At least that's my read of it. I don't know. I don't know if Jay Tallerman has weighed in specifically on that, but that's my read of the way the statute and this bylaw would interplay. And as I said, there's some evidence that other towns have looked at that and identified the same problem, because most of them, at least most of the ones I looked at, have a committee that for any regulation, any fee that requires the approval of that committee. Sometimes the committee is the select board before those regs, fees, et cetera, have the force of law. I just think that needs to be cleared up. If Jay Tallerman, it wouldn't be the first time he disagreed with me, but if he says that, I know he's got experience in a bunch of different communities, that the interplay is different than the way I read it, I'm fine with that. But I don't think that's the way the statute, the mass statute, and the town bylaw would interplay at this point. And I don't know why we just don't.
Is he looking at this?
I
Jay
don't
has
know.
looked at, yes, he has. He's
Okay.
reviewed the bylaw, and he didn't comment on that at all.
Okay.
A couple of things, Marty. The problem with having the select board approve the regulations is that they would have the effect of a bylaw, but then we have this bylaw. So that appears to be a conflict to me. Well, then you have two bylaws that could possibly say different things.
But-
Well, that's my feeling.
But but can I just stop you there? Regardless, in other words, right now, this doesn't have regulations and fees in it, right? In other words, the contemplation is that the tree warden, and there's no question that the tree warden has the authority to frame regulations and fees. But again, if you look at what other towns do, they don't allow that authority to be unfettered. They require it to be approved. Again, in most instances, it is a tree committee or some other nomenclature. But someone else besides, again, this could be somebody who lives wherever, who has no connection with Southborough other than the fact that they've been hired as a tree warden contractor. And that's a remarkable amount of authority. And I suspect that's why other towns have created a buffer between the ability of an individual to promulgate those sort of regulations and impose that sort of a fee structure, and the actual authorization of those regulations and fee structure. Again, looking at the way other towns have done it, I'm not sure if there's another interpretation of it. Then they're concerned about the fact that one person would wield that sort of power. And I'm not sure why we would ever think about giving one person that sort of power, unelected.
So would you accept the planning board reviewing those regulations?
I'd rather have the planning board do it than the tree warden do it independently. I'm not sure why we wouldn't do what other towns have done. I'm not a big fan of reinventing the wheel. And what they seem to have settled on is a separate committee.
Right.
So there's.
Well, we wanted to keep this simple, and to create a second committee would seem to be a little complicated at this time. We just wanted to create a process that would encourage us to follow Mass General laws and give us an outline on how to do that.
No, I hear you. I think that sort of protection for the town is worth an additional paragraph. Okay. I don't think it's that complicated.
So let me ask the other planning board members, would you be in favor of amending the bylaw to have the planning board review the rules and regulations and the fines?
Yeah, this is Dawn. Yes.
Okay. And Marnie?
Yes, I'd be fine with that. Can I just add a clarifying question?
Sure.
So in the current draft bylaw, we reviewed it on Monday. We accepted a lot of Andrew's recommendations. Andrew, thank you so much for spending time with that. So there's two parts. There's C1 under the tree warden, and it states what the tree warden is the agent of the town, and the select board shall have the right to review the conduct, acts, and decisions of the tree warden. And then in jurisdiction D1, it says this bylaw applies to all public shade trees in town. The tree warden, in conjunction with the planning board, shall have jurisdiction over all trees to which this bylaw applies, as set forth in MGL. Is within the writing of this law, would we instead put it in the job description or the roles and responsibilities of the person that's hired in the role? Because it's kind of inherent that the decision is in the C tree warden 1. The last sentence says the select board shall have the rights to review the conduct, acts, and decisions of the tree warden.
Why isn't that last sentence good enough, Marty?
So.
Oh, I don't think it's good enough. No.
So could it be enforced with like the role and responsibility in the the job description? Or you're saying it has to be in the law?
The way statutory construction works is the specific overrules the general. So if you have a general provision, like you've just referenced, Marnie, in C1?
Yeah.
The specific authority for the tree warden to promulgate regulations and set fees, which is a specific authorization, overrides that. The specific always overrides the general. That's that's statutory construction.
This is Don. If I could just tune in, what I'm hearing is that the way we're proposed, not you, Marty, but it's being proposed, is that if we look at the job description, then the person's supervisor, I would think, is the one who interprets the tree warden's performance and compares the performance to the job description. So if the performance, or if the job description isn't highly specific, then the supervisor of the tree warden would have, I guess, broad authority to interpret the tree warden's performance as being okay or not okay. I know there's a lot of strength in a job description, but the next step above that is the supervisor. And who would be the tree warden supervisor? That would be the DPW director. And so I hear you, Marnie, and I think the job description is an important tool within this management tool, but it may be putting us kind of back to where we are now.
Hey, Don, can I just follow up on that? That's one of the other things. It is unclear to me reading this, who is the, you just said the DPW director is the tree warden supervisor. I don't think that's the way this bylaw reads at all.
I don't either.
It's meant to change that, right? That's one of the.
And that that's one of the complicating things for me, because again, I'm not a big fan of reinventing the wheel. And again, most other towns do it differently than this is proposed, in a number of different ways. They don't identify the tree warden as an agent of the town. I'm not sure where that term came from. An agency has specific legal implications. And so I'm not sure where that term came from, where we borrowed it from, or if it was just if we decided to use the term, but it has specific legal implications. It's not used in, I did a search. It's not used. That word does not apply in any of the bylaws, Mimi, that you gave us as models. And I looked at a bunch of others and I never find that word. So I'm wondering, A, where that came from, and what the implications of identifying somebody as an agent of the town are, singular or plural. But again, this goes back to, when I read the bylaw, the thrust, the intent of the bylaw is fine, but the devil is in the details. And Andrew caught one, which I think was an enormous problem in the definition of public shade tree. I'm glad that's been rectified. But these are again, I go back to the big thing. I have no idea why we would ever think to give one person the sort of authority that this bylaw gives the tree warden. My preference would be to do what other towns have done. It's a paragraph. It's creating a tree committee. We're on the one hand, we're saying this is something that's incredibly important for the town of Southborough that people are really interested in. I don't think we're going to have trouble populating a tree committee. And you could, again, I've looked at the provisions from other towns, and presumably they've gone through a vetting process and they've got experience to come up with that process. I don't know why we wouldn't adopt that, why we would go our own way when no one else, as far as I can tell, has gone that way. I just don't understand it.
Because it is another committee. So Marty, you're not in favor of what Mimi is proposing, which is to let the planning board be that committee?
Who, me?
Yeah.
My first preference would be a separate committee. If it's the planning board, the board of selectmen, really anybody is better than just giving the authority to one person. I think that's an enormous mistake. My preference would be it be independent of either the planning board, which has got an independent review responsibility, with the tree warden for the various hearings and stuff like that. And I suspect that's why there are separate committees in most of those other towns, so that the intersection that happens with the tree hearings and with the oversight that's provided in here is independent of the oversight. For the most part, those other towns, it's the tree committee doesn't supervise the tree warden. In most of those other towns, the tree warden is supervised by the Department of Public Works. We're going to do it differently. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But it just strikes me that there's a little bit of a balance here, going with the select board having some responsibilities and the planning board having some responsibilities, giving the planning board the additional responsibility of signing off on regs, fees. That's preferable to giving the authority to one person, but it's not preferable in my mind to keeping those responsibilities separate, just giving it to another committee. Again, we create committees all the time. I don't think it's that big a deal. And again, we're saying this is an important thing. I can't imagine that you're going to have trouble populating a tree committee. But if we want to go a different route, that if folks feel differently, I still prefer a committee, a board, whatever, rather than one person having that level of responsibility and authority.
Mimi?
Okay, so we've agreed to amend that section under the review and acceptance of the planning board.
Well, who's agreed to that? I haven't.
The
my preference is a tree committee.
Well,
the planning
so
board
I asked you and you said it would be better than nothing.
Right.
And the planning board just agreed to that.
Okay. I didn't catch that. Okay.
The planning board just agreed that the rules and regulations and fines of the tree warden would be subject to approval by the planning board.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm okay with that. The point is just that some elected board should review it so that they don't become the fines aren't excessive, etc.
Okay, understood.
I'll let other folks go on. I'll pause for now. The authority of the tree warden was my big bugaboo in the way this thing was structured. So I'll let other folks. I've got some other things, but they're nits compared to that.
Back to you, Chelsea.
Okay, thanks. And I'm actually just going to ask a quick question of Mimi on that point. So is your preference to have it with the planning board because you want to get this moving as quickly as possible and you're worried about filling a tree committee soon? Or in the long run, would you be looking to fill a tree committee if that was possible?
So perhaps at another time, create and fill a tree committee would be preferable. But for right now, we
Yeah.
were trying to set a process in place, which we don't have. And
Right.
if
So
then-
would you consider setting it up so that it says, in the absence of having a tree committee, the planning board would be the default if there wasn't a tree committee created, or in active membership or something like that? That might be a way for you to do a short, if the planning board doesn't want that to be the long-term solution, then you don't have to go back to change the bylaw if you ever do decide to create a tree committee. That's all I'm saying.
No. I'd have to think about that. I think to amend the bylaw, I think we would have to go back to town meeting. And to create a tree committee, it's more than just naming it in the bylaw. You would have to lay out what the responsibilities are, and it would.
You think
There'd be
you
more
would have
to
to, you would have to lay out the responsibilities within the bylaw, is what you're saying? Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. Sam, I'll go to you next.
Thanks. I guess I'm not as worried about this as Mr. Healy is, but it seems to me that we appoint the tree warden. So if the tree warden does something that's crazy, we can simply replace the tree warden with somebody who's more reasonable. But I'm fine with the planning board being the review process here. So I'm okay with that. And again, I don't have any other questions at this point.
Sam, when you say we, you mean select board?
Select board, yeah.
Okay.
And I actually, Sam, with that question, maybe it's that easy, but my understanding is that a tree warden gets appointed for 3 years. Am I wrong about that?
I don't actually remember.
I thought the statute required that it be a 3-year term.
I think you're correct, Marty.
Is that true?
Yeah, so I don't think, so
Not that
I hear you're not being as worried about it as I am, Sam, but I think it's not that easy to get rid of the tree warden once you appoint him or her. They're there for 3 years.
All right.
But they're going to be appointed by the select board as an independent contractor? Is that what we're talking about? Not an
Not
employee of
necessarily.
DPW?
Doesn't have
It's
to
not
be.
clear.
Well, right now we have an employee of the DPW who's the tree warden, who we've had for, it's been that way for many, many years.
So I'm just thinking budget wise, like I always do. Are we adding a separate line to the budget here, or is the intention
No.
for the select board to appoint someone within the DPW?
The select board has already appointed someone within the DPW.
But it's only through 6:30, right?
But going forward, if this bylaw passes, is the select board going to appoint someone that could be an employee of the DPW or anybody else? Or are they going to possibly do that? Or they could just hire someone from Boston as an independent contractor? Is it the choice, the select board, as far as who they hire specifically?
Yeah, so
Yes.
that's something that has not been flushed out yet. So that's why the appointment is through 6/30/22 with the stipend in the SAP. So it is separate from the union contract. It's a SAP stipend right now.
I guess my assumption was that it wouldn't be someone within DPW because of the way the rest of the bylaw is structured. I mean, the rest of the bylaw is structured so that DPW has no oversight over the tree warden. It just strikes me as odd if the tree warden is somebody who reports to the director of DPW. Again, that can be worked out, but it's an odd structure.
I think the short answer is there is going to be additional cost to this. But
That's what I'm trying to get
next,
to, Andrew.
yeah.
So Chelsea, can you, so the person that was the warden until recently was an employee of DPW, correct?
Currently is, yep.
Okay, so that was as part of their job description?
Nope, it's a separate appointment. So it's a separate stipend in the SAP. It's a
Okay,
non-union.
so, and the stipend was how much?
4,000.
Yeah,
4,000?
four
Okay,
a
so
year.
you got paid his normal salary from DPW, and then you got $4,000 out of the personnel board
Yeah.
budget for the tree warden job. Okay, that person's gone, and now we've got a temporary tree warden.
Think
And
the
it's
same
the
person.
same employee.
Okay.
It's the same employee.
Same person.
Okay, all right, I'm not sure it matters. Okay, so the plan is for select board, if this bylaw is passed, to appoint a new person July 1st?
So
Possibly.
we have not gotten that far yet, but the way that I understand this is that there's more qualifications in this for the tree warden than currently exists in the position that we have. Is that?
Kelsey, you
Yeah,
know where I'm
Randy?
going with this. There's nothing in the budget for this, other than the $4,000 in the SAP budget.
So
right?
there's an $85,000 tree expert line item in the DPW budget.
There is. So we do have, as to my knowledge, some money that has been used to get an arborist in to do some work, but we have not spent down that line item. I think 25,000 was spent through Q2. I don't remember what it was through Q3.
I think the tree experts, and maybe Chelsea or Eric will correct me if I think the tree experts line item is also for tree removal because to this point, if residents have requested there's a tree in the public way, and it's, when I say hazardous, I mean it looks like it's not going to fall down tomorrow, but the resident is concerned about it, right? And I do think there's got to be some deference to the person that lives like right in front of the tree, how they feel about it. That the town has sometimes been removing those trees, and that costs money. And the Karen does a contract where instead of like by each tree, they come out and get a bunch of them all at one time. Is that right?
Yeah, generally, yeah.
So it's not there's I think it's right that some of that money could be used for the tree warden, but I still think that, that's eating into the line item that is for other tree removal, including just town trees. So I think there would be some, here's another thing just to throw out there is whether it would be appropriate to have some, if this passes, some delayed implementation of it so that you could start to, get a sense of how much it's going to cost, find a way to fund it, et cetera, et cetera.
My
Well, and I
understanding is that the gentleman who's done the tree warden stuff in the past doesn't meet the qualifications that are included in this bylaw. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but that's my understanding, that there's going to have to be a new person doing these responsibilities.
Well, that's what I thought too. That's why I asked the
According
question.
to Karen, he meets the
No.
qualifications.
Yeah, he does. But Marty, the qualifications are, we crossed the line when we hit 10,000 people population. And that introduced qualifications. And one of the factors is you'll be a certified arborist, but you also can qualify if you have permits from the state for things like pest control and so forth. So there's another way to be qualified. And our current tree warden actually meets the standard, the ladder standard. So he's qualified to be our tree warden at this point. But one could argue that having a certified arborist as tree warden is worth something, and that would probably cost more money.
Okay.
And I know Karen has reached out to get some pricing, and it's around $150 an hour for an arborist.
Yeah, that's why I thought that the current guy did not either. Maybe it was that he didn't want to do it anymore. He was willing to do it till June, but with the additional, so we got that letter. He resigned.
Yeah, he said it was more work, so he couldn't handle it. That was the
Right.
letter said. Anyway.
So there'd have to be a new person, presumably, unless he changes his mind.
Mhm, right.
The thing is that we have mass general laws in place right now that we do not comply with. We have in this town become a tree city. In 2019, we passed a tree bylaw that further pushed us to follow Mass General laws, and we still don't. So, you know, delaying the implementation of this bylaw is not serving the residents in this town that like to have shade trees on their roads.
Mimi, I don't disagree with that, but A, we got to get it right. And B, we have to know what it's going to cost. I mean, that seems pretty basic to me.
Okay,
See,
so
we
I'm
have
confirming there
money.
is $85,000 in our
Yeah.
fiscal year 23 budget for line item called tree experts, which
Right.
I didn't remember, but it is there.
Yep. And so we might wind up with more money for a certified arborist or a tree warden and less money to do the annual, tree cutting work in the town. And the question is, is that a reasonable trade-off? I personally think it is a reasonable trade-off to do a better job of assessing and removing trees with professional input on it.
Sam, I don't disagree with that, but that goes back to Kathy's question, which is if there's no one in DPW who meets these qualifications and there's not a position to be hired in DPW, then the only thing we can do is have an independent contractor carry out those responsibilities.
Right.
And that's the $150 an hour that Chelsea was talking about that Karen had done some research on.
And pay that out of the 85,000.
I think we're going to have to increase it, because what good is having an arborist to tell us what to take down if we can't take it down?
Right. But
So
clearly not going to cost us $85,000 to hire an arborist. So.
But if that includes taking it down too, that's what I think Chelsea's saying. So you got the two things rolled into the 85.
Right. As I said, we
Arborist-
may take down fewer trees, but hopefully we will take down trees more appropriately.
But Sam, we're also paying $150 each time somebody needs a permit to plant some bulbs or somebody wants to do anything. This tree warden is going to be inundated with things, and this arborist is going to love it because they're making $150 an hour to get called out to somebody that wants to talk about a tree.
We've hired arborists in the past to assess a group of trees. And I don't remember exactly how much that cost, but that was not a huge amount of money. You don't have to, spend $150 on each tree, for example, typically.
But Sam, I don't disagree with anything you're saying. It's just that we don't know.
Right.
And we don't know what other towns are spending. As I said, from my review of the other bylaws, I don't want to say all of them, but certainly most of them place the tree warden in the Department of Public Works. It clearly is a similar structure to what we've used in the past, where it's an employee who's already getting paid. So presumably a stipend on top of that is not at $150 an hour or something like that. It's just, I agree with you. There are ways to do this. And there are allocations of money that the town can make to pay for it, but we don't know what they are right now. And that's just, that strikes me as a basic thing that we have to be able to explain before we add a new position. What's it going to cost?
Well, we can manage that as well in the sense of, we can establish a number and say, here's what we can afford for the arborist. This is how many trees we can do with this amount of money with the arborist. Just as today, we're limited in terms of the number of trees we can remove simply because we have a lot more trees for removal on the list than we have money to remove in any given year. So to me, it's a matter of balancing it and managing it, again, between DPW and the arborist. But
Does the
you're right,
planning board
Maureen.
not want this person to be part of the DPW? Is that what part of this is? They
No,
would like the
no.
person to be totally outside the DPW?
I don't think so.
Because if they don't, then I agree with Marty. Why wouldn't you want a person, if you've got a qualified person that can do other things to basically, have dual responsibility so that they're here and can probably do things a lot more efficiently than someone that's being called in as an independent contractor is driving here, charters for the time to drive here, whatever, and getting called on maybe really small things where a person that's already here working can just knock him out. So I don't know.
The planning board has no issue with that.
The bylaw doesn't limit that. You could have a person in the DPW with this bylaw doing the tree warden function. I think. I don't see.
Doesn't want to do it, Sam. I mean, we're back to the point. We don't have, there is not somebody sitting there waiting for us to appoint them.
Right.
The person that you're talking about resigned.
Right.
And agreed to hang on till the end of June. There will be, unless that person changes his mind, there will be a new tree warden in Southborough.
Right.
And unless there's two ways to do that. Either there's an open position in DPW. I don't know if there is. I don't think so. Or you create a new position in the DPW or elsewhere, or you hire an independent contractor. It's unclear which of those paths are going to be followed right now.
Or you could find a person in DPW who is willing to get the permits required to become a tree warden and keep that position in the DPW. I mean, if I were in Karen's position, that would be what I would look to do, frankly. But she has to figure that out.
I mean, just jumping in here quickly, listen to this. There's a lot of responsibilities for this person, right? For them to be a contractor, like, I don't think it's just responding to permits, right? To some of the comments that have been made. Just reading this bylaw, it feels like it's pretty close to a full-time position, right? Or they're going to be constantly in flux. I know this is a little nitty-gritty here. I know we just are saying we think numbers have been floated, but I mean, I'm just trying to do a Google fact check, right? And I can't find an arborist that gets paid $150 an hour. It seems incredibly high. Like, I'm seeing, $20, $30 an hour. So that's in our favor, but it brings up that same question. What does this really cost? And like, how do we narrow that down, and how do we explain it, right, to people who are potentially voting on it? So I'll stop there because I'm pretty limited in my knowledge here, but.
Marnie?
Yeah, just a quick data point. Is it possible for us to go back to Karen and understand what he does in his tree warden obligations and duties for the stipend of $4,000? So we would get an understanding of what is in his capacity and bandwidth, what he has been doing. He's obviously resigned because he's now realizing pretty much every road in Southborough is a scenic road. And I think that was new to him. But for that fact, maybe we just use the data point that he has information now that we could leverage to be able to predict what that would be. I mean, even at 20 hours a month, that's $3,000 a month. That's $36,000 a year at $150 an hour. I mean, I don't know if it's more than 20 hours a month.
And Marnie, I'm talked out on this. I think it's pretty clear. I think there are glitches in this that need to be worked out. I think Mimi, you and Lisa have come up with an interim process that would allow those to be worked out. In addition to talking to Karen, I think that what should have been done here and what still can be done here is talking to other towns that have this process already in place and find out how they do it and how much it costs. And finally, taking a step back, I don't think every road in Southborough is a scenic road. But by naming every road in Southborough a scenic road, we do have, we've larded all sorts of additional responsibilities onto a tree warden. They've got responsibility now, and the responsibility goes for hearings as well, for every tree in town, unless there's a numbered road. That has cost consequences. And we've already seen one of the consequences, and that again, he could change his mind, but the tree warden resigned because of the increase in responsibility. My view is that instead of taking every additional street that's been added since 1978 or whatever the year is, to take a step back and say, there's a statute that protects scenic roads in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. What roads in Southborough are fit into that protection? I will tell you, again, I looked at a bunch of other towns. There are a few other towns, that do what this bylaw in conjunction with the other one would do, which is to name every road in town as a scenic road. Most of them, and I consider most of the responsible towns, don't do that. They identify real scenic roads in their town so that they don't do what we would be doing, which is essentially larding, in my view, responsibility that isn't necessary. I live on a nice little street. It's not a scenic road. And the idea that the responsibilities that go with a scenic road have to go for my street seem kind of silly. So I would also, one of the steps I would take to pare down the responsibilities for a tree warden, and quite frankly, the cost, is to take another look at what we're doing from a scenic road standpoint. I'm done.
Marty, the scenic roads do not add any additional responsibility to the tree warden. It adds additional responsibility to the planning board. The responsibility of the tree warden is the same, except they need to have a consolidated hearing when there's a tree removal. There's no added responsibility to the tree warden. And this bylaw does not designate any scenic roads.
But the next one does. The next one does.
Right, but this doesn't.
Andrew?
Yeah, quick point. So I don't know when I should talk or when I shouldn't talk, but I was kind of saving my remarks for about the scenic road one until the next one, because I think you're just trying to focus on this first. I think Mimi's right that the tree warden's responsibility don't increase by having more scenic roads, because the tree warden already has all those same responsibilities under the Public Shade Tree Act. But the designation of something as a scenic road does have the consequence to the homeowner, who, if they don't know their road is a scenic road, they cut down a tree in front of their house that's within the public way, that violates the Shade Tree Act. Now I think the statute has some type of a fine associated with it, right? That person could be they're subject to some type of a penalty, a couple $100. So
And Andrew, if it weren't a scenic road and they cut it down, there would be no fine?
There's still a penalty. You can't, they're not your property. They're public shade trees.
Well, I thought I'll take a look at it, but I thought there was more penalty for cutting down a tree that was on a scenic road than not. But I guess I'll save my comments for about what road should be scenic later, but I just wanted to jump in there with that. I'm going to go check it while we're.
Chelsea, has select board taken a position on 27?
No.
Okay.
No. Mimi, how would the homeowner know if a tree is within the right of way?
They would have to ask the DPW. And they can tell, they have maps.
Unless the homeowner has a plot plan that they know where their property line is.
But it's not the property line, right?
Yeah. Your property.
Your property.
Where your property ends, the right of way begins. So like my yard, I know where the right of way is because I've had the property surveyed several times.
But just having the property plot won't show you where the right of way ends, will it?
Yeah, it ends at your property line.
It shows you where your property is. So any tree on your property you can cut.
You just have to know to go look.
Oh, got it. Got it. Okay.
And don't think there's a question.
So if you have a tree that is within the right of way and the branches are hitting your house, but not necessarily a hazard on your house, do you have to get permission to cut those branches?
Yes, it's a public tree.
And what if it's half on the public way and half in your property?
It's a public tree.
If any piece of it, Mimi, is in the public way, it's a public tree? Any piece of the...
Within or on the boundary, yes.
And you look at the trunk of the tree?
Yes.
So how does the drip line factor into that? So let's say the trunk of the tree is on my property and the drip line goes over into the right of way.
Well, it's your tree.
Okay. So I could trim if it was hitting power lines, but the trunk was on my property.
I wouldn't recommend trimming near power lines, but if it's your tree, yes.
No, not trimming my power lines. I mean, I would hire somebody to, but I'm not going to.
But she could take care of it without getting a permit if the tree's on her property, and she had branches that were over the public right of way.
Yes, it's her tree.
So how are you planning? I don't know that my sense is that people are not going to know this and people are going to show up and give them a fine and they're going to be like, I had no idea that I was doing anything wrong. So how are we going to, I think and I'm comparing this to the illumination bylaw that you brought forward last year. And I think, the way that you approach that was a kind of a soft approach. And I think, it wasn't meant to penalize anyone, right? It's trying to, get help the environment and kind of make sure we're moving forward. How are you planning on educating people on this and enforcing it, especially if people are not aware?
Well, I think through, the town website, the town blog, we'll work on a frequently asked questions sheet, and get out the word the way we always do. And I would think that, the fine structure would be such that the first, unless you cut down a huge tree, that the first violation would be a warning or something. But
And who's going to enforce that?
who enforces it? It's the tree warden has jurisdiction over all public shade trees.
So he would show up and give somebody a warning or a fine if he was notified about it. I mean,
As he should be
I
now,
guess, yeah.
but it's
At
not
his
happening.
discretion, in other words, he's got the discretion to waive it if it is the first time, clearly accidental.
He really has the discretion to waive it, and he has the discretion to set it. So I think that's one of the things that jumped out. If you removed a tree, and correct me if I'm wrong, Amy, in the public shade tree in your yard, you thought it was on your property, it wasn't. You would need to pay into the tree fund the value of that tree based upon the certified arborist. Where when I read MGL chapter 87, the max fine is $500. So for me, I would like to see a max fine of $500 added to this. But that's just my personal belief. So right now, if you cut down a tree, if he is a certified arborist, he could say you cut down an 8-inch wide trunk tree. That tree has a value based upon my knowledge, because I'm a certified arborist and that's all it requires, of $100,000. The fine is $100,000.
Except for Mass General Law says you can't be more than 500.
But and that's what I'm trying to figure. Does this supersede Mass General Law? Because it doesn't say.
Marty,
I think generally towns.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, that's a minimum. You can, if Mass General Law says the fine for littering is $20 and Southborough wants to make it $200, you absolutely can.
but if MGL says it's a max of $20, then we couldn't, correct?
Yeah, but that's if you're enforcing it under that provision of Chapter 87 as opposed to the town bylaw.
Right. Did you go to law school?
I minored in law. I minored in law. I'm not as good as you guys.
We're always looking for more revenue. Here we go, $100,000 a tree.
And Marty, while I have you, another one. Case law. So there's multiple cases of case law in which, in between a neighbor, you are allowed to cut the roots and anything intruding onto your property from a neighbor's tree. How is that any different with a shade tree? So if the branches of my neighbor's tree are leaning over my property, and under case law established many times, I can cut up to the sky and down to the earth on my property line. Why can't I do that to a public shade tree?
Andrew, this is why lawyers make money. There's arguments on both sides of that. I suspect that there's a pretty good argument that you can do exactly what you're describing. But unless you went and got an advisory opinion from a lawyer first and spent the money up front, you'd be taking a risk.
I mean, I got that, these two case laws directly from MassGov rules on this. And
yeah, but Kate, I mean, yeah, I hear you. And I just from what you described, I find it persuasive, but I suspect there's a pretty good argument on the other side.
Yeah, I mean, Michelson versus Nutting. The owner of a tree is not responsible for the damage its roots cause to a neighboring property, but the neighbor's right to cut off the intruding boughs and roots is well recognized.
Okay,
Yeah.
we're getting a little far afield here. We're trying tonight to figure out whether there is a consensus on anything that needs to be changed, whether we support these articles or not. So we've got Marty's original statement that he doesn't like all of the broad authority that the tree warden is being given, and we understand that why. We know we've got questions on how to fund this thing and where it really fits. So there's two. Anyone else have any issues? I mean, I've got a very small one. Mimi, the actual, I don't like another revolving fund, so I'll just put that out there. I wish we didn't have any revolving funds. So I'm not going to not oppose or not support because of that, but I wish we had no new revolving fund. But if you're going to do it, unless I'm looking at the wrong warrant, you've got the wrong reference to the article in the definition of Southborough Tree Fund. You've got it established by Article 29, and it's actually your Article 27. So I don't.
Yeah, I think that's been changed.
Okay. This is what Mark sent me this morning, just so you know, though. So if it's been changed, I think it got changed pretty recently.
Andrew, when
Tuesday.
did you change the definition for public shade tree?
Monday night.
Yeah, it was accepted Monday night at the planning board meeting and sent to Mark on Tuesday.
Okay, I think because the version I have, I think, is the one from the noon at the 11th. So that wouldn't have it, right?
Right.
Okay.
So does everyone agree that select board has signed the warrant? So therefore, any changes that everybody agrees might need to be made are going to be made as amendments at town meeting. That's where we are at this point.
Mhm.
Right?
Kathy, I see that Marcy's had her hand up for a bit.
Sorry, Marcy, go ahead.
She's off in the corner on my screen, so it's hard to see.
Sorry, Marcy. And now you're muted.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Kathy. I just had a quick question for Mimi. Thank you for the presentation. The schematic that you had up with the tree, with the road, the 50 feet and the 24 feet in Southborough for the paved portion. Does that match up with the public shade tree definition as written on page 42 with the distance of 20 feet or less from the layout of the public way? So my question is, based on what you showed, it seems to me that in Southborough right now we have, if you had equal distance on both sides of the paved would be 13 feet, but this is saying 20. So I was just wondering if that's a change or if Southborough has a different number than what is listed here, which looks like it's Mass General Law of 20.
So is that under the definition?
Yeah, it's under definition of public shade tree, which I know Andrew has edited with you guys on Monday night. So it says,
Yeah.
or at a distance of 20 feet or less. What you showed seemed like it would be 13 feet. So I think that's just a question that people might have in terms of where do you draw the line, sort of what Andrew's saying as well.
So Andrew
Yeah.
edited the definition into two sections. So
Okay.
where the confusion is that Mass General Law 87, Section 7 allows for the tree warden with the permission of a private property owner to plant a public shade tree on private property within 20 feet or less from the right of way. And also the right of ways in town aren't all, that graphic was just to show older roads. You know, they were built for horses, and who knows what the layout is, and they're of varying widths and the right of ways change, but they, under our current roads, are more consistent.
All right, and then the other bit of good news, this might be what Eric was looking at, but it does look like Needham, the town of Needham currently has a certified arborist posted for $27 to $29 an hour, and they require the license and I think what Sam was mentioning, possible alternative means to qualify, but that would equate to about $60,000 a year, possibly.
Where did the 150 come from, Chelsea? Karen?
Yeah. And I think she was looking at arborists that were not affiliated with a tree cutting company or a tree work company. I think that was one of her criteria. So I don't know if that's what the difference is, I can certainly follow up with her on that.
Well, and I think if you hire an arborist on a consultant basis, it's going to be more expensive than if you hire an arborist.
Or if you
Mimi,
hire
does-
arborists-
On a regular basis.
if you
Mimi,
have-
does this bylaw absorb everything in the bylaw that planning board will be responsible for? Will that be able to be absorbed under your current staffing model?
Yes.
Okay, so you're not going to be looking for additional FTEs on your side to hold hearings and anything
No,
like
we
that?
hold hearings now.
So does the select board have any other issues with what is in the warrant tonight besides what you have described? Go ahead, Eddie.
I have one, and so this is one of the comments. So one of the comments that I had where it looks like it was discussed Monday night, but I don't know if anything was done about it. And it has to do with basically the trigger on when does let's take the scenario where someone sees the tree in front of their house. It's within the public right of way. They think it's dangerous just from their experience of, living there for 25, 30 years. It's really, really tall. They've seen it move in the wind, but no, it's not something that you say needs to be cut down right now. Who pays for that? Because this is saying that the trigger is under H5, person requesting the rule of a non-hazardous public shade tree is responsible for paying for the hearing, removing it, police traffic details, etc. And under the tree replacement, if it's removed for a private purpose, then you also have to pay into the tree fund or plant 2 additional trees. And I don't necessarily have a problem with that. It's just getting some more sharper clarification about what those terms mean, because like there's just one example of a tree that Karen mentioned to me. Okay, here's an example of a tree that a resident says, I want this taken down. Now you drive by it. I actually have a picture of it. I think it's kind of compelling. You look at it. There's just nothing really like all that particularly special about this tree, other than that you really go up and you look at it, it's huge, and it would cost a lot of money to take down, and it could damage all sorts of other people in the neighborhood. So I could see a situation where, because it affects a bunch of people, the town would say, okay, we're willing to help you by taking down this tree because it benefits everyone. I mean, this is kind of saying like, okay, depending on whether that truly was a non-hazardous or hazardous tree, the person that asked for it to be removed has to pay for it. So who's going to make the decision about whether that public shade tree was hazardous or not? Because there's a big financial aspect to that determination.
There would be a hearing. So unless it's an imminent hazard and there's not time to hold a public hearing, there should be a hearing for the removal of all public shade trees.
All right, so I mean, it wasn't explicitly put out in the bylaw, but that sounds, as long as if there's an elected board that's making that determination, and and then once you have a hearing, have people that are fellow residents in front of you making their case. Hopefully, there'd be some consideration of, if a person, often the person that it's on. I know it's not on their property. They own the fee to the property, but the right of way, the tree lies in the public way. I hope some consideration is given to their own, view of that, right? Because some of these people have been waiting a long time to have these trees taken down.
Andrew, I'll give you just an example of, there were 4 trees on Clifford Road, and I had to pay for the hearing, the public notice. They didn't affect me personally. They were down the street, but they definitely were hazardous. They had the hearing, planning board. This is when we actually did follow the rules. The planning board held the hearing and they agreed that these were hazardous. So they did remove them on the town dime, but I did have to kind of raise it and pay and I think that's appropriate personally. It's how it's been done.
How much did the cost of so you didn't have to pay
like
to take down the tree?
No, I had to pay for the public announcement in the newspaper.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good to know. When did that happen? Like
like 6 years ago, maybe,
All right, okay.
before I was a planning board member.
Okay,
So we've heard from, I think, all the select board. I think we've heard from most advisors except for Mr. Martell. Tim, anything you want to question?
No, I have nothing to add to the conversation at this point. Thank you.
Yeah, Kathy, I had one more thing if I
Go
can.
ahead, AP.
I think one part that still sticks out, I mean, we talked about in the presentation, this not impeding the rights of private landowners. And the only part I see that may not be right for is the permit required for construction, demolition, or excavation in a drip line. And the hypothetical I want to run by. So a tree is on the public right of way. Its branches lean over my property. I want to go out there and plant some plants, some flowers, even aerate my lawn, right? That would be considered digging, which would be considered excavation. So I'm going to be required to get a permit from the tree warden in order to perform those duties on my property. I mean, that's how I'm reading it.
So I wouldn't consider planting plants and aerating your lawn construction or demolition.
I'd consider it excavation.
I wouldn't consider it excavation either.
Well,
But so the thing is that you would ask the tree warden, and if it doesn't kill the roots of the tree and endanger the tree, there's not going to be an issue. That's why that is there, because if you dig up all the roots of a public shade tree, you're going to kill the tree, or you're going to make it unstable and it's going to fall on your house.
But what's missing is a definition for excavation. So it's going to go back to, and Marty, correct me if I'm wrong, Black Laws Dictionary, which in digging anything, right, is considered excavation. And, so again, if I want to use chemicals on my lawn and maybe that kills the tree, but I didn't excavate, right? Am I held liable for that? So I think this does impact what I can do on my property for something that isn't on my property. And I think that part is not in MGL. They talk about cutting and trimming, but they don't talk about what you do on the ground.
They talk about injuring the tree.
Correct. But that's an after the fact. I shouldn't have to if I kill the tree, I kill the tree, right? Come after me for that. Fine me $500. But I shouldn't have to get a permit anytime I want to aerate my lawn, plant some bulbs, but by definition, I'm going to have to. Or you need to revise the excavation definition to say down to a depth of 6 feet, 5 feet for a distance of whatever you want to put in there. But there needs to be more definition of excavation than just saying excavation, because it's the very loose definition.
So if you put a definition, it's going to depend on what the tree is, the depth of what the roots are at. And you just can't define every single term in the bylaw. Some common sense has to prevail at some time. And just keep in mind that we are obligated under Mass General Law to protect our public shade trees, and we are not doing that in town, regardless of how many times the residents in town vote that trees are important to them, say that the rural character in town is important to them, and survey after survey after survey, and we have been ignoring that for years.
And I agree with you, Mimi, and I plant public, trees, and I live on Oak Hill where there's plenty of great specimen trees that are in the public right of way, and I care about them. But this bylaw, when you look at it, it is taking away rights of public, private landowners. That is exceeding what is in Mass General laws. You could say in there, you cannot harm a tree's roots to the point of killing it, but the permit is a step forward past what Mass General laws is. So I'd like to see anything with the drip line and permitting process for anything on construction removed and replaced with something along the lines of, you cannot do construction excavation to the point where it would kill the tree. but I don't think the permitting process is appropriate. That's all I got, Kathy.
Okay, so Chelsea chiming in here, but it seems to me that the issues raised tonight, maybe Marty's issue has been appeased a little bit. It's not exactly what he wants, but at least there's going to be a separate committee, the planning board, to basically quell the any overt or excessive power of the tree warden. So Marty, I don't know if you are appeased enough to support this. Chelsea, do you guys plan on voting either tonight or at your next meeting? Or are you going to wait to town meeting?
I don't think we're planning on voting tonight. I'm not sure if we would vote for vote on the 26th on this. That's our next regular meeting.
So you don't know?
No, we voted to put at town meeting on the warrant.
So just for everybody's information, both, it may not have been a formal, because so both Lisa and I talked to Mimi about possibly postponing. We think they kind of go hand in both articles to the special fall town meeting that we are anticipating the select board is going to call. And I believe the planning board voted unanimously not to do that. They would like it to come for this town meeting. So I assume that's still the planning board's position, that they really want these to go forward. Is that true?
Well, so first, the planning board's never formally been asked to postpone the meeting. And we were in the midst of hearings and we voted to continue our hearings. That is correct.
So if you were formally asked tonight, and again, Chelsea, I don't know what select board thinks about that tonight, but if you were formally asked tonight by select board and or advisory, is that something that you would entertain? And I'm not sure there's enough issues to postpone it. You know, if Marty's issue is mostly resolved, not necessarily perfectly, but enough that he would support it, I think we can work out the money piece of it probably separately, just to make sure that we don't have a budget problem here as far as that goes. So I just haven't heard, I don't think, enough of an objection tonight to necessarily postpone it. My reason for postponing is because I really thought that with everything already on the warrant, that I think is going to cause a lot of discussion, that it just seemed like it'd be a better time to entertain this in the fall. And I know Mimi thinks that we sometimes aren't fair as far as planning board sponsored articles. I just think you get a more people really focused on this if it were at the fall special town meeting. Lisa has come up with an agreement that would put a moratorium on cutting down any trees between now and then, that I think probably works, which I know that was your concern. So I still would prefer it to see it in the fall, but I still don't hear a whole lot tonight as far as reasons not to support this at town meeting. I thought there were more objections than what I'm hearing tonight.
Kathy, there's a couple of hands raised.
Okay, go ahead, Andrew, AD.
Yeah, so I don't know if advisory has taken a vote yet, but when I was
We have
looking at
not. We have not. We
the,
want.
the version of the warrant that I have, it says underneath this article, it says advisory committee recommendation support 7-0.
I saw that. I was very excited.
No, it says so.
I think
That's
it's
not
a
how,
typo.
It wasn't true, but
that's not what we sent them. So that's a misprint.
It's a typo.
So
You got a very short window to try to correct it if it hasn't already passed. But,
sorry, Mimi. Wait, but it's not. You know, we haven't gone the other way either. So we just haven't voted. So
yeah. Okay, just want to bring that to your
thank you.
attention.
Thank you.
And Kathy, it also has support on the scenic as well.
So what are you looking at, Andrew? Mark sent us one late Monday. That's all I've seen. So you've got a new version?
There was a version. There have been so many different versions
I know.
that there was one in the middle of the day on
Today?
Yeah, I'm looking at the one on the 11th, middle of the day.
4/11.
Yeah,
4/11. That's the most recent version I saw.
you might. So Kathy, do you have a sooner one than 4/11 at noon?
No. That's what
I
I've
think there
got.
is a more
No,
recent
well,
one.
let me back up. I got 4:11 at noon. That's what I've got.
I think there is a more recent one because Andrew, your edits are in that new one. So I don't know.
That's
Hopefully
gonna be
Mark
the most
fixed
recent
that one.
All right, we'll get that fixed. Okay, so but back to the question. Does anyone on the select board and or advisory want to formally request the planning board postpone this, or do we think we're ready for it? Chelsea?
Does anybody on the select board want to request that we postpone it?
It's the same, no. Marty?
I find that an odd request. So I'm neither requesting nor not requesting. I think there are issues that need to be addressed. I'm very wary of unintended consequences when you're enacting a law, which this is. And I think there are unintended consequences buried in this that some of them have come up tonight, but the language is not as tight as I think it should be.
So you don't think it's ready?
That's not what you asked me. You asked me if I was going to
I
formally
agree.
ask them, and I said I was not.
Well, one reason to postpone is because you don't think it's ready.
Well, do I think it's ready? No. Am I going to ask that it formally be postponed? No. Those are two different
but
things.
then you're implying that you're not going to support it, probably. So you don't have to say, but that's what it sounds like. So
that's a third question.
Okay, sorry.
So
Okay,
I think it's fair to say that the select board will not be requesting a formal postponement.
Yeah, I came into this, I spent probably like 4 hours on Sunday focused on that. That's what just forced me to, you look at it and then I pulled up the statutes in this bylaw and then you see, oh, they're basically just fleshing out what's in the statute. So I really came into it thinking I was really hoping that this would go to a fall town meeting, but I think, no, I wouldn't request that it be moved to the fall town meeting, although there would be just all sorts of logistical benefits to that, given how long the warrant is. But I still hope that there's some amendments that can be done between now and that's what happened with the illumination bylaw too.
I think regardless of what happens at town meeting, though, we just need to continue to move forward to make this better, because we, regardless of if this bylaw, gets brought to town meeting this round or in the fall and passes or fails, I think, even with not passing, sorry, Mimi, but if it doesn't, I still think that we need to make sure that we're moving in the right direction and following a process that is the right process, right? And I think Mimi and Lisa had presented to us a short-term proposal that I think is the first step in that direction. So I think that's the biggest takeaway, Kathy, from the select board, is that the acknowledgement that we need to do better, and that regardless of where we fall on the specifics of this bylaw, we're committed to helping in the process.
Okay, so Chelsea, are you saying that if this were to pass at town meeting in its current version, maybe with, one amendment, as far as Marty's concerned, that Mimi has agreed to make, or planning board's agreed to make, that, so what do you mean we need to continue to approve? It's passed. What are you going to do to continue to approve it?
No, I'm saying if it doesn't pass.
Okay.
Regardless of what happens, we know we have work to be done. And if it does pass, then we need to figure out how we're going to fill the tree warden. I mean, that's our biggest hurdle, I think, in whether it passes or not. So that's what I mean, is that we know that we have work to do if it passes and if it doesn't.
Anybody else from either committee?
So is this the end of the discussion about the first article, and are we then going to talk separately about the scenic roads designation?
I think so. The first one seems to have run its course as far as issues go.
I think Kathy, I mean, I think there's some big changes that I would like to see, and I don't know whether or not they're able to be done before this town meeting or whether or not it need to be pushed, but and for me, the big sticking point is not having a cap on the fine. Right? I think it should be fined capped at $500. But I mean, if you accidentally lost a tree that was large, I mean, you could be on the hook for tens of or hundreds of thousands of dollars in replacement costs. And I think that's excessive.
Andrew, that's easy to amend at town meeting, though.
Yeah, I mean, not to exceed $500, right? I mean, I'd be happy to add something like that. And then the needing a permit for excavating, demolition, and that, I don't think that part should be in there.
Anything that's going to be changed is going to be an amendment. So, okay, there's 3 things that could be amended at town meeting. Anything else, AP?
I'm assuming the definition, Andrew, you cleaned it up, but I mean, the definition basically is that the 20-foot thing is what some people said, hey, so I can't do anything within 20 foot of my property. And it's only if you allowed a public shade tree to be planted on your property and you sign the agreement in writing, right? So I think clarifying that is good enough. I'm assuming, Andrew, that's what you did.
Do you want me
Yeah,
to
because
read?
when I first read it, I read it the wrong way. I thought that what I did was I started to measure out 20 feet from like the edge of the asphalt from my house on all these trees. There's no way that makes any sense. There has to be a permit scheme with all these trees that I frankly want to take down. But then Sunday I went and you looked at the statute. There's the statute has a screwy definition where there's this other category of shade tree it's not in the public way, but it's within 20 feet of the edge of public way, and you have it exactly right, and you gave permission for it. So basically, you don't even have to worry about it.
Yeah, and most of the time you have to sign an agreement that states that you know what this means and you're going to keep it alive and water it and maintain it and all this stuff. So I think if you put that in there, I think that clears it up. Anything else I had? Yeah, I mean, I think having an FAQ from town council, because that explains even if it's on your property, you can't trim it or cut the roots like you could if it was between you and your neighbor. Right? Because I mean, I've always had that legal precedent in my head that, my property rights go through the earth and through the sky. And anything leaning over it, I have the ability to trim as long as I don't go on my neighbor's property. And does this or does this not supersede that?
So you're suggesting that Jay puts together FAQs for town meeting?
Jay or planning board or selectmen or whoever. I just think that, that's an outstanding question that I want to personally, if I can reach out to Jay, I'm fine. But I think that's a question outstanding that I have a question on as a citizen. And I know other people have approached it to me as, why is this any different than a neighbor's tree that I can't do anything I want on my property? And there might be some precedent in Mass General Law that says a shade tree is exempted from that. I don't know.
So Mimi, as you're taking questions from town meeting, we better have a better answer than what we had tonight as far as who the tree warden is going to be, et cetera. That was a little jumbled tonight, so it really should get clarified before a town meeting so that it's clear. If someone says, well, who is going to be the town warden? How's he going to get paid? And listen to this tonight, I don't think they would understand the answer to that. Okay, so anybody else want to express any other concerns about Article 27 before we move on to scenic roads? All right, so Don, you're up.
Oh, you can see me now?
Yeah,
All
I
right.
can see you now.
So, first of all, thank you for having this meeting tonight, joint meeting. For us, it's just these 2 articles, and I can't remember having so much attention or time provided by both boards just for these types of articles. So thanks again. So the scenic road bylaw, I guess we'll start off with scenic. And there might be a better word for it, or maybe it's the best word. But if you look it up in the dictionary, it says having views of pleasant natural features. The state law has no definition of scenic. If you look at chapter 40, section 15C, there's no definition of scenic. But they do talk about scenic road designation. So I think in talking to different people, the word scenic is, I don't know, more looked at by its definition. And to me, that definition, I think, applies to just about anything. If you have a road, let's just think of the ones in Southborough, or pretty much anywhere, but having views of pleasant natural features. So you could have, if there's a tree on the road, is that a pleasant natural feature? If there's a stone wall on that road, is that a pleasant, not necessarily natural, but feature? Well, the stones are natural, but the fact that they made it their way to a wall, I guess, would involve people. And what if you had a road that had no stone walls and no trees, but it had, let's say, water, a pond on either side of the road? I mean, somebody might say, well, that's a pleasant natural feature. So we have to focus more on the scenic road designation and the wording of the law, which spends most of its time talking about the hearing, the requirement for a hearing, and how that's advertised and how it's held. So again, there's no definition of scenic. But if you look at other towns, and we have many of the towns that have scenic road designated roads, they have a separate something in their code that will define a scenic road. And I've looked at them, and they don't drift very far at all from the Webster Dictionary definition, which is having views of pleasant natural features. And we could do that. But then, to me, in looking at this, and I think to the people that designated roads in town before us, looked at it and felt that it would be a difficult task to say that this road over here is a scenic road and that one over there isn't. The trees on that road are more important than the trees on the other road over there. Same with the stone walls. So we can see that when the scenic road designation law went into effect shortly thereafter in Southborough in 1975, I count 10 roads that were designated as scenic or received the scenic road designation. 1976, 8 more roads were added. And then in 1978, and I think all of you have done the homework on this, so I'm just going over it, that all remaining town roads not currently designated as scenic roads shall be designated as scenic roads. And that includes, where's Marty? I don't see him. Oh, okay. That includes Marty's Road. It is a scenic road. And I know there's some beautiful trees on Upland Road. So what we're doing here is, I guess, like a lot of the other towns that we've looked at, is kind of waking up and seeing that many roads in the last 20 or 30 years in the towns between 128 and 495 and beyond, many of those towns have built new roads and not looked at designating them as scenic roads. If you look at the actions of other towns nearby, you'll see that some of them have recently gone back to designating newer roads, some that might be 20, 30 years old, as scenic roads. My discussions with the town of Harvard, they seem to be the one town that might be the closest to us in designating virtually all the roads. I was told not all the roads, but almost all the roads in the town of Harvard, they have designated as, given that a designation of scenic road. And that's what we're trying to do with this bylaw, and get caught up with the list that we received from DPW, which I think counts up to 68 roads since 1978. And that's pretty much all that we're trying to do. And it gives those roads the same level of protection as the ones that were designated prior to that point in 1978. And if you think about it, what the extra protection by being designated as a scenic road, why would you say one road that has trees and stone walls is more worthy of being protected than another road with trees and stone walls? So it may actually be more work to go through road by road, try to get a clear definition, and find a road that doesn't fit the look or the qualifications that we've assigned to the roads that are already designated as scenic. I think that number is over 150 roads right now in Southborough are, based on the 3 actions of previous town meetings, are designated as scenic roads. And this just catches up with the 68 additional ones that have been built since then. And as we said, this protects trees and stone walls, and it basically adds that additional level of protection by having that public hearing with the planning board. So that's pretty much all we're trying to do, is get these newer roads caught up with the way we're trying to manage our trees and stone walls throughout the town.
Don, can you clarify what you just said? So if a road is designated as a scenic road, what is the impact of that? What happens at that point that wouldn't happen otherwise?
Sure. First of all, the law says that a city or a town can designate a road as a scenic road. That gives us the authority. After a road has been designated as a scenic road, any repair, maintenance, reconstruction, or paving work done with respect thereto shall not or include the cutting or removal of trees, or the tearing down or destruction of stone walls or portions thereof, except with the prior written consent of the planning board. Then it goes on about if there's no planning board. After a public hearing, duly advertised twice in the newspaper, and it goes into how to advertise that public hearing. But it's basically without the prior written consent of the planning board after a public hearing. Also says that when a public hearing must be held under the provisions of this section and under section 3 of chapter 87, prior to the cutting or removal of a tree, such hearings shall be consolidated into a single public hearing. And again, we used to do this. You know, I've been on the planning board for a while, and we used to do this. And then it seemed to just not be happening anymore, whether the road was scenic or not. Did I answer the question there, Kathy?
And so then turn it around. What's the downside of passing this? What's someone going to say as far as why they wouldn't want this to happen?
Well, then you wouldn't have that piece which says that you can't take down the trees or the stone walls without prior written consent of the planning board after a public hearing. So a tree on, let's pick a road here, a tree on Schuyler Drive that had to be cut down or determined to be cut down or stone wall moved, it could be done without the written consent of the planning board after a public hearing.
And we're still talking about trees and stone walls on public property.
Absolutely, public.
So who would, in the normal course of business, tear down a stone wall to begin with?
I don't even know where to begin with that one.
Okay, well, give me one example.
The corner of Lovers Lane and Flag Road, the Oregon Road. A new homeowner came in and tore the whole wall down, completely gone. Planning board called him in and asked him why he did it. He didn't know, he didn't like it. Well, since you didn't get permission to do it, the planning board voted that he restore the stone wall, and he did. The stones were pretty much manufactured stones rather than field stones. But this has happened all over town.
Okay, but the wall wasn't on his property to begin with.
Correct. But it was in front of his house, so he cut it down. He took it down. It happens all over town. Not necessarily total removal of the walls, but partial removal. But we also see where homeowners upgrade the stone walls.
But what right did he have to do it to begin with?
To upgrade the wall?
No, to tear it down.
No right.
So he had no right to do it to begin with, even though his road, Oregon Road, is on here. I don't know if it is. So I don't know if Oregon was a scenic road at that point, but he had no right to tear it down, even if it's not a scenic road, because it's not on his property, correct?
That's right.
Okay, so Chelsea, back to you as far as select board.
Okay. Does anybody want to go first on this one?
I'm okay
Andrew, go
with
ahead.
it.
I think Sam and I raised our hand at the same time, but
No questions. I'm okay with it. So go ahead, Andrew.
yeah, so I have a different interpretation. So why did the guy on Oregon Road take, I don't know, but one thing, just something that sticks out in my mind, you drive to Framingham, they have different colored signs on the streets for scenic roads versus not scenic roads. Ashland, at least I've seen one or two signs. Roads which are scenic roads have a little other, so then the distinction starts to actually mean something. And so a layperson might start to say, oh, why is my road designated as scenic road? And then start to learn about it, et cetera, et cetera. Here, where every road is a scenic road, the distinction doesn't really have much significance. And my concern is the key difference is that if all roads are scenic roads, then every public hearing to request the removal, trimming of any tree within the public way on any street has to be a joint hearing between the planning board and the tree warden. And that's a lot more logistical challenges than the public hearing. These tree warden public hearings can be, I think, please correct me if I'm wrong, some of the hearing you can just have it like right at the tree, you can have it at the DPW. And some of the hearings, nobody shows up, they're not really contested. So if every road is a scenic road, it looks like already there actually are a lot of the roads in the town are designated scenic roads, you start enforcing this, then My concern is it's going to take a lot more time to fit in these public hearings on the ordinary planning board agenda, where there's already lots of other stuff. You meet every couple weeks, rather than the tree warden public hearings can be a lot more flexible and be done quicker. I just don't think this extra layer of protection that you're talking about is really needed. And because of the concerns that I've heard about removal of trees that people were concerned about, they're all on, for lack of a better term, the traditional scenic roads. And when I started to first kind of learn about this issue was in the fall at the select board meeting. Sam put together a draft flow chart of how the process worked, and he had a list of what he thought were the scenic roads, and you looked at that made sense. Roads like Oregon Road, Lovers Lane, Flag Road, Deerfoot Road, etc., etc. So I was just so surprised when you learned that in 1978. By the way, the vote was like 79 to 64 or something like that. It's not like it was an overwhelming vote. It was a very small vote. So I don't know why we have to be like, it was not like a vote, I think, that is something that like is completely set in stone. We could never vary from that policy. I mean, my ideal world, which I understand is not going to happen, you would have a shorter list of designated scenic roads, and then all of the resources and protection would be devoted towards those, and that would reduce the number of complaints about trees significantly. And then you wouldn't have to deal with all of these other concerns about people being worried about additional kind of hurdles about taking down public trees, but they're really on trees that have no other like real great public significance. I mean, like, I live in a little development here where I've seen a lot of trees taken down probably without permits. I mean, no one seems to have a problem with that. It doesn't affect the overall look and feel of the town. I totally understand people's concerns about taking down trees on the very scenic roads in Southborough, but so that's why I don't support this. And there are other towns where they've got the criteria. It's not based on what's like in a dictionary, but what's scenic. It's a town will be designated as a scenic road if it has stone walls, it's along significant natural resources, things like that. Like my street is a scenic road. It's a nice road, but it's not like scenic. I mean, it's not part of the overall look and feel of the town.
Thank you. Marty?
Yeah, I think I made clear where I stand, and this is Don. I appreciate your view. It's chocolate and vanilla. I just have a different view. It's kind of close to Andrew's, but I looked hard, and the only town I found in our what is Massachusetts 363, whatever the number is, however many
351.
Okay, I found Boxford. Boxford is the only one who does what we would be doing. Doesn't mean it's wrong, but I think that places like Lexington and Concord and Weston, which obvious places with terrific scenic roads, that they find a way to do exactly what Andrew said, and that is, make decisions as opposed to just throwing everything in a bucket. I'd make the decision and decide what is scenic and what isn't, and with the benefits that go along with that, but the elimination of hurdles for the designations that don't go along with that. So that's where I fall.
If I could just get caught up with a couple of the comments. Andrew, first, you indicated a heavier workload for the planning board to manage these public hearings. And we went over this with the board more than once over the last probably couple of years. And the importance of the streetscapes, the importance of the rural character of the town, which is what we hear from virtually everyone who moves into town. I love Southborough because of its rural character. So if people are interested, and we think they are, in having preserved and protected streetscapes that I guess you would hope would preserve or create where it doesn't exist, the rural character of a street and of the town. If people don't want this, then that's fine. I just feel that if you were on a street that didn't have this level of protection, you call it hurdles, but I think we look at it as a form of protecting and preserving and hopefully creating a more rural character, protection, better management of the public trees.
But here, when you're saying it's a different layer of protection, take the example of where it's a tree that's in front of my house and it's within the public way. I have familiarity with it because I live there. I think that it has very little scenic value. It does not affect the overall look and feel of the town. It has nothing to do with people's positive feelings about the overall rural character of the town. Now, if it has to come down, I need to go to the planning board, and then the planning board may have very different views about whether it's hazardous or not, whether it should be replaced with this type of tree or that type of tree. So I think what you're referring is the additional layer of protection. It's not a layer of protection that I would want, and I don't know anyone in my neighborhood who would really want that additional layer of protection. I think what you're really talking about are the traditional scenic roads.
No.
But Andrew, take your example a little bit further. So you've got a tree, right? You think it should come down, and let's say it's not a scenic road. You're not designated. You currently
right now we.
Go ahead.
Okay, then you just have a hearing with the tree warden, right? That's it.
So there's still that layer of protection. You still got to deal with the tree warden. He's got to say yes, right? He agrees.
Yeah, this is another layer of the tree warden and the planning board, right?
Okay, but the stone
because
walls
you have
don't.
two hearings if it's a scenic road. So
the
now
stone walls don't have that layer. Stone walls, the example that Don gave, the guy tore it down, and planning board ordered it back up, right? But you were still able to do that without the scenic. Well, let me back up. That was a scenic road. That was a scenic road, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
so you use the scenic road designation, say, sorry, put it back up.
Yeah. So Kathy, to that point, a lot of towns use a prevalence of historic walls along the right of way as a definition of a scenic road, right? Because you want the extra protection for the stone walls, which I would agree. I think to Andrew's point, the trees are already covered under the public shade tree. This is another level of security. And I think there's certain streets in town that if they don't have a stone wall, and they might be built in the last 5 years, the trees on there should be covered by the public shade tree and don't need that extra level of scrutiny. I think it's a belt and suspenders for something that we don't need belt and suspenders. But
Chelsea, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I think I think we live in a beautiful town, but we also have a Route 9 running right through it. And I just don't think that every street in town should be designated scenic. I think it takes away from the designation of some of the really beautiful streets that we have. So I'm not in favor.
What are those? What are the streets? First of all, Route 9 is a numbered highway. This doesn't apply to that.
I understand.
But
White Bagley, I think, is something. You're on the reservoir. You have beautiful stone walls from, I don't know when they were constructed. I think it's a beautiful road to drive up. That would be one that I would designate. My street's right off of that. That would not be one that I would designate as scenic. I mean, it's a really beautiful street, but I don't think I think that White Bagley is something that I would think is the next tier of scenic.
So we've seen in our research for this, we've seen many of the towns have a definition. They create a definition and a regulation that the town, clearly defines or does the best that they can in defining what they think is a scenic road. And in those definitions, you'll say, it may say stone walls, it may say trees, it may say both, it may say open pastures, it may say a beautiful view. And then if you go to, if we define that, trees and stone walls, and did you say White Bagley Road?
Yes,
That has trees and stone walls. And then you go on your
and a
street
water view.
and it has trees and stone walls. You get caught up in that. We can do that. That's another way to do it. And I don't disagree with you. However, this is a way to protect all the roads with the same level of protection. If the people don't want it, then fine. If they, and it's really it's kind of surprising to me, but maybe my point of view and those who support this can't understand why people think or say things about cutting trees down and that are healthy or whatever. So it's a clear, seems to be a clear different viewpoint of trees and stone walls, and this isn't necessarily intended to make people think differently about it. It's just asking the townspeople to have a uniform level of protection for the streets throughout the town, and another management tool for the protection of stone walls and trees. If we don't want to do it this way, then don't vote for it.
Hey,
Don,
AD,
the one thing I would say, Don, is I don't think I have a view that's different than yours, except that
Yeah.
I don't think we need to regulate with an additional layer. So that's not, I don't want this framed as we like trees and are more concerned about trees than somebody who thinks that we should do what most other towns do, which is to go through the effort of designating. So there's a clear understanding of what the town thinks is a scenic road. So I don't want this framed as the tree people versus the not tree people. I just don't think we need the additional layer of regulation.
and that's what it says. This is additional as far as the trees go. I think we need to make that clear. Stone walls, this is not additional. But if you got a road like AD was talking about that doesn't have stone walls, and it gets designated scenic, what is it we're trying to prevent on those roads? If there's no stone walls, we know the trees are protected already by the tree warden and the tree bylaw. What is it that else could happen on that non-scenic road that we don't want to happen?
Kathy, go ahead, Mimi, sorry.
Sorry, just, it's not another layer, it's a consolidated hearing. So it's just that the planning board and you don't go to the tree warden and have a hearing and then the planning board and have a hearing. It's a consolidated hearing. It adds another level of transparency because having a tree hearing at noontime in the middle of the week in the DPW yard is not really inclusive of all the residents and it's not very transparent. Whereas people are used to looking to see what's on the planning board's agenda and going to planning board hearings. So it offers another level of transparency. And additionally, trees have a lot more benefit than just the aesthetics. So just because you think a tree doesn't look nice doesn't mean that it isn't contributing to the environment, cleaning the air, reducing heat. There are many benefits for having trees. Thank you.
So Mimi, aren't you saying by the consolidated hearing process that if all roads other than the state roads are designated as scenic, then every time there is an issue on a tree, somebody wanted it to come down, every single one of those has to come to the planning board?
Right. As they used to, by the way, up until 5 or 6 years ago.
But isn't that why we've got a tree warden to do most of that? So
we had one then.
So what besides trees and stone walls are we trying to protect as far as roads here?
I can answer that, Kathy.
Go ahead.
And this is, my experience has been framed by Park Central. You move into a nice wooded scenic area, and then down the road from you, some developer purchases a lot of land. And it's not just about taking down the walls or the trees. It's about making the road straighter, wider, faster, capable of handling more density. That's not what I moved in here for. And without those protections, you're vulnerable to that happening at any moment. It can happen. It almost happened to us. It might still happen to us. So you got to be very careful when you throw these protections away. I'm very much in favor of this bylaw. The question I have, Don, is how are you going to police this, right? I was jogging down Lover's Lane the other day, and I saw a whole bunch of trees just got clear cut, and some of them were right on the road. Was that done legally? I mean, who's going to be watching all this?
Probably the same people that are supposed to be watching it now, which I think is the neighbors, the DPW. If something's happening on a town road that doesn't seem right, like for example, cutting down trees, the neighbors should call somebody. Call the select board, call the DPW, call the cops, do something.
Yeah,
But Lover's Lane is a scenic road already, so that shouldn't
Right.
happen, right?
and I'm not talking about the new house going up. I'm talking about on the other side of the road. Probably they took down, I think it was at least 15, if not 20 trees. At least one of them was literally right on Lover's Lane, and I didn't see any papers posted. They just did it, and it doesn't look like anybody knew about it. So my real question about this is, if it's not policed, what's the point?
Well, I think that's why the first article we're talking about sets in place a permit scheme. So at least that's a step in the right direction, because you can at least inform someone, look, you were supposed to apply for a permit there and you didn't. You start educating people about you have to apply for a permit. But Tim, you also raised the point, the laws which are on the books right now are almost borderline so broad, they're almost just unenforceable, because you have so many streets, so many trees within in the way. We're not going to create like a new police force that goes and patrols looking for violate. I mean, if you wanted to, you could go up to that person and say, by the way, you violated this provision, I'm going to sue you, or try to ask someone to fine you. I mean, I guess you could do that. It's just people have different levels of comfort with confronting their neighbors about things like that. So at least once you set up a permitting scheme,
we all just sit back and quietly just let all this happen.
No, I think that's why
there's
there's
the alternative.
No, I think that's why the permitting process that you're looking to implement makes sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, this is an attempt to, first of all, match the other scenic roads in the town, but it's also another tool that we feel, after hearing things like what Tim just said, I was unaware of anybody cutting down any trees, and I live, a few roads down from Lovers, but this is another tool to educate and to educate the people in managing the town trees. The trees come down, it's too late, $500 fine. The people are going to say, I'll pay $500 to get rid of that tree. I don't care. And the tree comes down. The damage is done, and it'll take another 40, 50, 100 years to replace it. So something's got to be done, and we're trying to put forth things that are working in other parts of the town, and a management system of protecting and managing the town's trees and stone walls. It's kind of I think this area, these different opinions we're hearing tonight is excellent.
Yep.
And it seems like if you're on If you're in favor of it, no one's going to change your mind. And if you're not in favor of it, nobody's going to change your mind.
Well, Don,
So-
I also think it gives you an example of questions you're going to get at town meeting too, so it gets you better prepared to answer those. So advisory, any further questions as far as at least understanding what the intent is, the pros and the cons? AP?
So I think the pros and the cons are, I mean, honestly, if you add them none of the streets that we're adding, I mean, the last one was built in 87, have a historical stone wall. I don't think. So it's, my only concern is if this extra step, because I know that has something to do with roads and building roads and cutting down trees and things like that. If from a road construction perspective, does this cost anything more from a Karen perspective? The fact that for every street that she has to go to planning board versus a tree hearing, I don't know if there's an additional cost or constraint, or whether or not I know we could use Chapter 90 money. I know that's not a concern, but whether or not there's any stigmata of it from construction companies or something having to do a scenic road paving versus a non-scenic road paving. I don't know. That was my only concern.
Yeah, that's a good question. I know that in the past, there's been different fund sources for the public hearing notices, and we'll have to look into that to see what, if any, additional costs there would be to the taxpayers. Thank you for that question.
Yeah, Don, it might be minuscule because we're gonna have to do one with the tree warden probably anyway. I was just thinking more of, if we go out to bid and we say we need paving on scenic roads, and to do that, any tree or any branch that needs to get cut down of a certain side is going to have a joint hearing with the planning board. If the paving companies or anybody like that's going to say, I don't want to get into that extra level of bureaucracy or not, does that cost us anything more? Or they might just say they're so used to it, it doesn't matter. And then I have no concerns.
So, Don, it looks to me like you've got, I don't know what advisory thinks, so I can't tell you that, but the 3 of the 4 select board members don't sound like they're going to support this with all streets being brought in. Yet I don't think anyone's proposing to try to filter this and figure out what might be scenic. And I don't think you want to get to town meeting and try to figure that out there if that's where this ends up. If you've got the same, audience at town meeting that would like the true scenic roads to be protected, but not all of them, which is what AD, Marty, and Chelsea are saying. Sam seems to be fine with the whole thing. Then I think you got a problem at town meeting, because I don't think you want town meeting to start filtering through these, trying to figure out what is scenic road.
You're absolutely right, Kathy. We don't have a definition of scenic road. So either from the way I see this, either this is passed as it is or not. You can't start picking from this list of 68 roads which ones you think are scenic and which aren't. If this doesn't prevail, then the next step would be to create a definition and then apply that definition to all 68 roads, their full length, and see to what extent each of them may qualify. But the next step, if we don't do it this way, then the next step is to create a bylaw or some type of a policy that would define for the town of Southborough, just like many of the other towns have done, have a clear definition of what would earn a scenic road designation. Can't, at this town meeting, we can't, it's either accept this as it is or not. And if not, then we would launch into that, clearly defining what would be a designated scenic road, and then analyze each and every one of these 68 roads. It's a lot of work, but It may come out the same way, may not. Thank you, though. You're right. We can't pick away at this at town meeting. That won't go anywhere.
Eric, any questions, any comments, your viewpoint?
No, appreciate it. Nothing to add. I mean, I'm supportive of it for the reasons that Tim mentioned. Nothing.
Marcy?
No, nothing to add. I'm also in support. I think preservation, rural charm, character. I think every tree should be looked at with planning board involved. Thank you.
Timothy, anything else you want to add?
No, just I'll reiterate my support.
So it looks like you're going to get advisory support on this, from what I can tell, and maybe not select board. So that's okay.
Maybe I should move to the advisory committee. I'm out of step.
You tried that, didn't you?
I tried that, it didn't work out.
I don't know, Sam. I think we got 3 votes for that. So
Nothing wrong with healthy debate. Okay, so any other questions for Don as far as scenic roads?
This was great. I really appreciate it. And it's all healthy. Listen to both sides, get good ideas, and see what happens.
We appreciate you too. I guess it's probably the last time we'll see you in a meeting like this, other than a town meeting.
Oh, you could always tune into the next planning board meeting, April 25th. I hope to attend that.
Okay. All right. Mimi, anything else? Marnie? Okay.
No,
All right.
just wanted to say thank you. And in answer to Tim's question on the Lover's Lane, were those the ones on the corner of Jacobs? Because there were some on Jacobs Lane, which is a private road, which were taken down. And there were some that were topped on Lover's Lane, and they were just the stumps that were left that Karen thought was okay for them to take down.
I don't have the address. I'm sorry. I could go jogging tomorrow and let you know.
Okay. Well, because I heard people call me when trees come down. I heard about those.
All right. So thank everybody. Chelsea, you want to adjourn your meeting?
move to adjourn.
Second?
Okay. Roll call, Marty,
Aye.
Sam,
Aye.
Andrew,
Aye.
and Chelsea's aye. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for your time.
Good night,
The,
folks.
Thank
Planning
you.
board has to adjourn also.
Yep, go
Um,
ahead.
I'll entertain a motion.
I motion that the planning board adjourns.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, Morris, yes.
Latrell, yes.
Houlihan, yes.
We're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very
Have a
much.
good night.
Planning board. Good night.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Good night. Good night. Okay, everybody, that was interesting. So we don't have a lot left to do. There was someone in the audience had his hand up, but he has left. So we'll go back to him. Okay, so we heard 27 and 28. All we've got left tonight to do is see if there's anything else we want to vote on, and then get our votes corrected if they've been printed the way they said they were in the warrant. I hadn't seen it printed that way. So AP, you think they're printed 7-0, both of them?
I thought I remember hearing something on the selectmen's meeting last night that Mark fixed any issues between the spreadsheet and the warrant.
You heard him say that?
I heard him say that, so this would be one of them. He said some issues with advisory votes, so I'm assuming these are them. But again, I don't have the final warrant that he has to confirm that.
All right, I'll check it to make sure so that it gets printed right. Okay.
And Kathy, can we suggest that next town meeting, we put this on OneDrive and everybody just uses the same warrant?
Yes, we can.
That would be way too efficient.
And they keep saying, well, we saved another version with a different time. And it's like, you don't need to, just save it and the version controls in SharePoint. Right.
All right, so I think that would be an excellent suggestion, along with a couple of things. Okay, so we could, does anybody want to vote on either 27 or 28? 27 is trees, 28 is scenic roads. So let's start
I'm
with
ready to
28.
vote.
On
I'm ready
both
to
of
vote
them?
on both.
Both
Yep.
of them? Anyone not ready to vote on both of them?
I think the fact that there might be some edits to 27 And I would want to see what those edits are that would change my,
You're not going to see any edits before town meeting. So.
but they may vote on, well, actually, we could vote on the warrant. And then we would have to re-vote any amendments, right?
We're going to have to do that no matter what. It looks like that's going to get amended. They agreed to do what Marty wanted as far as,
Okay, yeah, I can vote on how it's printed right now.
okay. Eric, any opposition to voting on both? I mean, you say no, you can vote against them, but any opposition to actually voting?
I'm ready to vote.
Okay, all right. So Marcy, you want to do the motions for both 27, one at a time, 27, 28, and then AP, you do the seconding for both?
All right, I make a motion that advisory take a vote on Article 27.
Actually, say
which is
support. So you want to say
Support.
Support. Yep.
To
Still say
support,
no.
sorry. The tree protection bylaw, Article 27 is printed in the draft warrant article, April 11th, 2022.
So that's where it gets, I'll second it. But that's where it gets tricky, Kathy, because that's not what the final one was printed is.
Okay.
It does get tricky, and I don't know what I don't know what the planning board did. I know they changed the definition of shade tree, right? From what we're looking at here. Okay.
Let's just hold off until we get the actual one.
Because we really need to vote on the language in our, we'll vote on the 27th. We'll have it voted before town meeting. So let's just get the language on 27. 28, I think we can vote on.
Yeah, I don't think 28 changed at all.
28
Should I withdraw the motion then, or?
Okay, Tim, we'll get it voted on the 27th, I promise.
Well, we have a motion and a second.
Right, so she just withdrew it.
Okay.
Okay, so Claire, did you hear? Marcy has withdrawn the motion to support Article 27. Okay, now let's go into 28.
All right. I make a motion advisory support Article 28, which is the scenic road bylaw.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion of the scenic roads proposed bylaw? Okay, roll call vote. Eric,
Aye.
AP,
Nay.
Marcy,
Aye.
Timothy,
Aye.
and Cook is aye. So that one, Claire, is 4-1 with AP being the nay.
And my only concern was that I still don't have that question answered from Karen. That was
Okay,
just
so,
mine.
all right. Okay, but I'm going to try to get that printed on the warrant. I'm going to call tomorrow morning to get that one in there. Okay, now the only other one that I think we might vote on, but we don't have to, is the $950K that is in the article to basically fund the feasibility study for the Neary project. So since we talked last week and several expressed concern about the amount, there's been a lot of information that has been disseminated that shows where the number came from. AP, of course, is our rep on that committee. And Andrew, I'll let you talk, but long story short, I think I think we now understand where the number comes from. John Lemieux, who was the employee of Vertex, which was the OPM for the public safety building, took a look at recent MSBA projects and basically got the number from that. And it turned out to be an average of about 1.6% of the cost of the project. And this 950 is certainly in that range, maybe a little bit low. So there's at least two of us here tonight that think that the number is probably in the ballpark. Doesn't say we have to spend it. It just says that we're being authorized to spend up to that. It's going to be bonded. It's going to be paid for by debt. But this is not to say that anyone voting for this necessarily supports our project. We're a long way away from that. All this is basically going to the next step, which is saying, okay, here's some money. Now you got to go out and study this, and you got to bring it back to the town, show the alternatives, what the costs are, et cetera, so the town can really make an intelligent decision as to what it wants to do. So Tim, I know you had an issue with the money piece of it. So I think I sent, or I think you got sent, because Jason Malinowski sent the whole thing to advisory. So you should be able to see the numbers in the email that Jason sent in the last day or so.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to use the right words here. Using a percent of the total price of a project as the price tag for a feasibility study is morally bankrupt.
Okay, so what would you recommend that is done to truly come up with a number that you think makes sense?
I think that, like any study, what it boils down to at the end of the day is what's the rate for the engineering firm?
Yeah.
How many hours is this going to take? Multiply it. $1 million for a piece of paper is not something I can defend.
And I believe most of them are time and materials, right? But it just so happens that, I mean, I ran the numbers and looked at the individual ones, and Kathy's right. It averages out to about 47 basis points for the OPM and 119 bips for the designer, right? So roughly 160. Similar size schools cost as much. Again, if we don't do it and we just rehab it, right, then obviously that's a different project. But I was skeptical, but I think it's certainly in the ballpark of, if we build a school of this size, this is what it costs. Or close to it.
Yeah, I'm not arguing the costs. Materials are expensive, particularly now with inflation, with COVID. I get that. The cost of a study, though, should not change so drastically over the period of 5 or 10 years.
But it would change.
It would change, but I would challenge you to find one of these from 2010 that was in the ballpark of $750,000. To me, this is just I'm sorry, I think the town's getting hoodwinked.
Well, it's not, this is just authorizing this, and this is totally under the purview of this committee, the near building committee, to basically get these contracts signed. And the way, so Andrew, help me, but the way John Lemieux, who again is the OPM that we use from Vertex, explained it is that the ultimate goal of, especially the architect that you hire, is he wants the big project. So therefore, you go to him and you say, and Tim's going to go, yeah, of course, it's going to be $950. You're going to tell him you got $950. Guess what? It costs $950. And I agree with that. You give somebody your number, right? They say, fine, that's my number. But that's what he's saying, do. You say, okay, we got $950. You whack off what he's going to get, the OPM first, and he's time materials to whack him off. So now let's say you're down to $650 or $600. You save a little bit on the side for any engineering work that's got to be done to dig some holes, whatever. And then you tell the architect, this is what we've got. We work for us. And he says most of them are going to say yes because they want the big project. So that's kind of how it works. But there's no, right now, I don't think there's anybody that on that committee that has proposed to actually go out and get some contracts before town meeting. I mean, this might not pass. I mean, this is a lot of money, right?
It's a lot of money. In a tough time too.
And there's a lot of people at town meeting that they don't want to spend money like this on schools. They think that we spend too much money on schools. You get, an older crowd there. They may say no to this. We've seen this before. They could say no. And then what do? You probably have to come back to this again with the special, with real contracts in hand or something, or some more details. So I don't know that town meeting is going to embrace this explanation that I just gave. They very well could say, not good enough. We want to see a contract. We want to see better numbers. We want to understand more than what is, I think, going to be said. So I don't know that it's going to pass.
Kathy, somebody's going to stand up and say, hey, I got an idea for you. Mothball Neary, keep Woodward as a school. We don't have to pay a dime on anything. Why are we spending $61 million to do this?
Well, there's also someone that's likely to stand up, Tim, and this is a real one that I think we know about, that's going to say, why aren't we just spending the $4 to $5 million that Vertex said needs to be spent on Neary to keep it going for another 10 or 15 years. Let's just do that, right? Instead of, and then let's leave Woodward alone, leave it open as a school. We can find a place for the two departments of South Union. We don't have to do a whole lot for that.
Right.
That's kind of an easy problem to solve. So there's a lot of permutations here as far as what to do, you know, but
Right.
Neary as a school, there does have to be money spent on it. That's a base fact. Woodward can't be expanded because of where it is. That's a fact. But in between those, there's a lot of choices here.
Yeah. I mean, the senior center is going to get renovated.
Yeah. And okay, let's stay on that one for a moment. So you talk to the seniors, Andrew, pipe in here. If you listen to them with what they've said at various meetings over the last year, they don't seem to be particularly enamored in moving across the street. Now, maybe that's a
Right.
minority, but at least the ones that speak don't seem to be jumping up and down about it yet. And it does look like they're going to get the expansion of the current senior center approved, possibly with ARPA money. Of course, you're the ARPA committee, but that's one of the proposed uses of it. And that's cheap. It's, $350,000, $400,000.
Yeah.
And
I
so
think
if they're happy with that, then they may say, we really, we're happy.
Yeah, I think the ARPA committee has accepted the fact that the selectmen are going to move forward regardless on
with
that one.
with that one.
Yeah.
So see, look, all the research subcommittee did was confirm that the expected demographics would support consolidating two schools, right? And then it said, if you're going to consolidate, you're better consolidating into Neary than Woodward. That's all it concluded. It didn't necessarily say that is the right project to do. It's just, if you are going to consolidate, yeah, if you wanted to, yeah, you could do it. And if you're going to do it this way.
Functionally speaking, I think you're right. Neary is a much better location for a school.
Yeah. And years ago,
Unfortunately.
2013, the people, it was a much bigger committee. It was full of school committee members and teachers, principals, whatever. Linda Murdoch chaired it. And that group liked Neary better than Woodward. And that was 8 years ago when Woodward was really new. So that was surprising too. So you don't hear that as much right now as you did back then. But people have always liked Neary as a school.
Kathy, it looks like it's noted in the current warrant that I'm looking at that we supported this as well. So
Yeah,
when I
I
looked
think
at
it's
that
all.
earlier,
All I know is, Mark, I
FYI.
sent the spreadsheet to Brian. So I haven't checked what they did with the spreadsheet. They called me and said, you didn't have any votes. I said, yes, I did. I'm looking at the spreadsheet. And then Brian realized he cut it off when he printed it. He cut off our votes. He goes, oh, I cut it off. So they fixed that. So I don't know what they did with that spreadsheet. Looks like we really need to make sure. And so I'm going to send an email as soon as we hang up and say, we got to look at those votes. So we didn't vote on that one either.
I just wanted to say I agree with Tim. Maybe it's from the lens of my day job that I just think something doesn't seem right here about this amount. And I question any study that's, going to produce something worth that much money. It has to be able to be done for less. I mean, unless there's evidence otherwise, I just haven't seen it yet. So
Yeah.
that's my 2 cents.
I think one of the issues is the amount of work. It's not just one study. It's not just saying we want to expand Erie. We want to expand Erie. We want to expand Woodward. We're going to build a new school in 5 different locations. I mean, the permutations. But again, is it 950? Is it 800? Is it 750? I think it's north of 500. But where is it in there? I don't exactly know. It's certainly in the ballpark of what other towns have paid for a similar type project. But in my conversation in the Neary School Committee was I recommended that the superintendent and the school committee representative have a discussion in their school committee meeting about the as Kathy said, what if we just spent the $4 or $5 million that Vertex came back and we got 10 years, right? If we're going to spend $4 or $5 million and we're going to spend $1 million just on the study, let's just use $1 million to fix it up and get 15 more years. They need to cover off on that and say it's not it's going to be more, or due to the nature of the building and programmatically, it just needs to be rehab. There needs to be something to take that off the table. Because if that's on the table, then the $1 million seems, questionable.
I don't see how you take it off the table though, AP. Someone's going to say, did you look at just keeping the school the way it is and doing what has to be done? It is 50 years old. There is a list of things that have to be done. It needs a new roof. It needs new lots of stuff, right? So that's a fact. But when you're talking about spending $5 million to do that and it lasts another 10 to 15 years versus spending, and I'm just making up a number right now, okay, but it's not crazy, spending $80 million that is such a huge difference as far as taxes, et cetera. And maybe it's the right answer, but if you conclude you should spend the $4 or $5 million, you're going to wish you didn't spend the $950, right? Then you kind of have the $950 wasn't needed for that, is my point. But this is chicken and egg. To get to the point, that's what you want to do. You probably do need to look at the alternatives, right? And lay them out and say this is the cost. So even if you end up spending the 4 and 5, that's what you conclude you should do, because the other one is just too costly, or for other reasons people just won't vote for it. Then you probably did waste some money on the $950. So this is, to me, a tough one. You guys want to vote on this tonight? Have you heard enough to decide what you're going to do? Do you want to hear more?
Vote.
I don't think you're going to hear much more than what we said tonight, right? AP at town meeting in this kind of gist.
Yeah, I'd like to see if the school committee comes back with anything rebuttal to the $4 to $5 million renovation. There's no point. We're not going to get it on the warrant, so might as well do it. We can do it at town meeting.
Well, I could get this. I'm telling you, I'm pretty sure I can get this on the warrant by calling tomorrow morning. If he got it there sometime today. That printer hasn't printed this warrant, so I'm pretty sure we could if you wanted to. Again, we'll have a chance to vote on the 27th or at town meeting. I just don't think the school committee is going to do much more than they have at this point. But if you think that there really could be something else that you hear at town meeting, we can wait. So let me ask you this, Andrew. At the meeting the other night, has the committee actually itself voted to support this warrant article? Did they really have a robust discussion about the article itself?
Yeah, that's why we went through all the numbers on the 950 and had John there.
It was just the part I heard was a pretty quiet piece, so I just didn't hear a whole lot of discussion from the committee members as far as the numbers. But maybe I didn't hear the whole meeting. Maybe there was a piece of it where it really did get discussed a lot. Okay,
I'm happy to vote as well. I just,
you want to vote? You're ready to vote tonight? Tim's
could,
ready to
yeah.
vote. I'll vote. AP, we can re-vote if we need to.
Again, Kathy, if the 4 million plus that Vertex talked about, plus what we don't know is what are the ADA upgrades that would trigger.
Yep.
Right.
Because that's not in there.
Tim say it's 4 or 5 million for what they had, because what they said is that amount of money would trigger it to have to be brought up to today's standards from an ADA and sprinkler, et cetera. But they didn't have a dollar amount there. I don't know what it is.
So sprinkler would be part of ADA?
I think so. That's what they said in the meeting, right? I'm not the construction guy, but if we could get from Vertex an idea of what that would cost, right? They say, okay, on top of the $4 million that we put in our estimate, you would also have to bring it up to certain codes because you're over the dollar threshold of the assessment or whatever it is. And that's going to cost an extra $1, $2, $5, $10, $20 million, right? Then we're talking about not a $4 million to get 10 years, we're looking at $10 million, $20 million to get another 10 years. And then it's like, okay, then maybe a new school is worth it. But again, I'm missing that piece to take that, spend $4 million and get 10 more years out of this building as an option.
I'm sorry for interrupting. Isn't there an inherent conflict of interest here if we have the same third party engaged across the board? They're not going to give us an honest assessment of how to extend the life of this project for 10 years if they're looking to get a $60+ million project.
It's a fair
Well,
point,
But they haven't bid on the OPM.
but they will.
But they will. I mean,
Yeah, but it's MSBA. It's going to go to the lowest.
I'm just saying I wouldn't trust a price they gave me.
Well, I mean, there's no doubt that they've got a vested interest in this. So we say that this guy, you know, have great faith in him. I worked with him for years with the public building committee, but Tim's right. He definitely has he's not objective and sitting on the sideline. He has got an interest in becoming the OPM on this project, no doubt about it.
Well, then, I mean, I'd take John Parent. You know, what is John's thoughts, or what is the school capital person? I don't know, somebody that has our interest at heart that can give us a ballpark.
Okay, but are we going to get this done before time? You know, this article is on there. It's going to get voted on. So
I mean, I told them
what else are we
there's a question that I have outstanding, and I know other people in the public do, and it's going to get asked at town meeting. Why can't we just spend what Vertex came back in their report and get 10 more years out of the property? And unless there's a rebuttal from the school committee that's proposing this article, it's not going to get anywhere. And I'd like to hear, I mean, we could change our vote. I just would like to give them the opportunity to provide that information. I mean, that would change my vote, right? If they come back and write with a grain of salt, the number is not 4, it's 20, then I'm more inclined to look at a larger project. If we can really get 10 or 15 years out of 400, you know, then that's a different story.
Okay, but we're not deciding that at the town meeting. We're just deciding whether to authorize $950,000 to be spent on a feasibility study. That's what the article is in front of us. It's not the project itself. So I don't know what is planned. I don't know what they're planning on saying to town meeting as far as this article goes. I mean, you could see this just getting tons of questions thrown at them, right?
I think I think the town should be asked if they want to spend $60+ million on a new school as a starting point before they're asked to spend $1 million on step one. It makes no sense to spend $1 million if the town's just going to turn around and say, no, we're not going to spend $60 million.
The problem there, Tim, is where you're going to get the $60 million. That's the feasibility study. So again, it's chicken and egg here.
No, it's real simple, Kathy. I mean, you go to town meeting and you say, hey, do you want to close Woodward and spend $60 million to rebuild Neary? Or do you want to close Neary and spend nothing and just keep Woodward open? And by the way,
we can't close Neary. Woodward can't absorb it.
Woodward's not big enough to.
Woodward, Trottier, and Finn could almost certainly absorb it.
We don't think so. Not with any certainty. That's why the conclusion was, if you're going to close a school, you got to expand Neary.
You could expand Finn, but again, there are some. Again, I'm not talking about the committee. The school district has always been in favor of the Neary location. And the school district is not going to come out and say, you know what, we really can do it with 3 schools and keep Neary closed. They're not going to do that because it's not what they want. So I have a lot of doubt here. To me, there's a very fiscally responsible, straightforward path for the town to take. And I don't understand why we're not pursuing it as our first choice.
Which is?
Mothball Neary. Why? It's an asbestos-laden school that we should simply mothball. If we have to spend some money to demolish it, demolish it. But we have 3 structures that can, maybe with some expansion, can house our student population without having to spend $60 million. Why is that even an option? The only reason it's an option is because that's what the district wants.
It's a true statement that they don't want to consolidate into Woodward because they don't think Woodward can be expanded enough to allow that. They don't want to put any other grades at Trotter than 6, 7, 8 because they think that it's not good for fifth graders to be part of 6, 7, 8. So we took that as a fact also.
Yeah.
Finn is built for little kids. And so that was a problem with putting another grade back there, is because it's really not made for older students. Now, my daughter went there when she was in 6th grade or 2nd grade, before they got Woodward back open, and it worked out fine. So you could probably put 2nd grade there. But now you've got, the possibly having universal pre-K coming too. So they wanted to make sure there's enough room for universal pre-K. So that was believe me, we spent lots of time talking about all the different permutations of the school grades, and it really was a recommendation of the school people in that group to do what I've described, which is close Woodward, because Woodward cannot be expanded. Neary could. If you built it and were wrong with the population, you could expand it.
Yeah.
Don't put another grade at Trotter, and don't put another grade at Finn to keep room there for the universal pre-K.
But the thing is, Kathy, I mean, that was a functional study and it made a lot of sense from that perspective. It was not a financial study. If you had done that study with a bunch of financial planners and financial analysts, they would have said, shut Neary down. Why are you spending $60 million when you don't have to?
Well, I
mean,
think the
nobody-
other question is if we can repurpose Woodward and not have to build a senior center or a rec center. But again, that's another story too.
That's another story too. The other part is that you don't even have to mothball Neary. If you rebuild it as a non-school, it's a fraction of the price.
Yeah, and we agree with that. That was discussed, so we totally agreed with that.
There are so many cheaper options that are not being pursued. It's like we're going for the golden goose, and we're going to spend $1 million to get our paper. It's like our golden Willy Wonka ticket.
Tim, I'm not sure we can afford the actual big project, just so you know. So
I'm with you.
When you look at what the debt service on that is, it's big. When advisory looked a few years ago at how the public safety building would fit in with other wishes of people, a new library, community center, we surveyed everybody and we felt like it fit in nicely. Some debt got paid off, it slid right in. Of course, it increases your taxes, but it didn't increase them above what they were. So, so you still had a pretty good slope as far as taxes go. This is different. Back then, and then when we built schools last time, the 3 schools, we had a ton of reimbursement from the state that we're not going to get this time. Building costs were cheaper and the state reimbursed more than 2/3 of it. We're talking about a 20% reimbursement now. So it is a whole different ballgame right now than what we've seen in the past as far as what we're looking at financially. Okay, so do we want to vote? Do we not want to vote on this one? At least get a vote into the warrant that we can always change if we think there's a reason to. So, Marcy, do you want to vote tonight? Okay, AP, you want to vote?
I'd still like to know what the actual cost of renovating Neary would be and keeping 4 schools.
So that's a no. You don't want to vote, right?
No.
Okay, I got yes or no's. Tim, you want to vote? All right, and
I'm ready.
Eric? Okay, Eric? Eric is shrugging his shoulders.
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute. I'm torn. I don't feel good about either option.
All right, so Marcy, we're going to go ahead and vote, and then Andrew, I agree with you. I think we should try to get that information before town meeting because I think it will be needed at town meeting. So Marcy, you want to make a motion to basically support Article 16?
I make a motion that advisory supports Article 16.
AP?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion before we vote? All right, roll call vote. Eric?
Nah.
AP?
Abstain.
Marcy?
Nay.
Tim?
Nay.
And Cook is aye. So we've got, let me count this right. We've got 1 for Claire. We've got
131.
131. Okay, sorry. Thank you. 131. So 3 nays, 1 abstain, 1 for. So 131. So we do not support the article at this point. All right. Okay, it's 10:30. I don't think there's anything else we can vote on. I will find out why our votes are not recorded correctly in the warrant. I'll get that straight down the warrant. I'll try to get this vote in. So that one's done. And then the scenic roads one too. Okay, so any public comment from Marcy's husband? He's our public. We lost our public earlier. Okay, so we're going to meet next. We got next week off, guys, so we get a break. We'll meet next on the 27th, and we're going to hear from two. So there's 4 citizens petitions. Michael Weishen's sponsoring 2. Michael Weishen is in room. He will not be here. Patricia or Patty Fiore is going to come, and she wants to come. She actually asked to come to talk about her 2. On the 27th, we'll have CPC here, I hope, to talk about that one in personnel. We haven't heard from them yet. So that'll be the 27th. So I think that'd be a pretty quick meeting. Then we'll just kind of round up our discussion and then be ready for town meeting, which will be the following week at 5 o'clock at Algonquin.
Kathy, can we get from personnel a redlined version?
Yeah, really, right? Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Are we
All
gonna
right.
have, Kathy, are
ahead.
we gonna have anybody else in the audience, like, or joining us for those citizen petition articles?
Coming to that meeting.
Yeah,
Who would you want to have? So
I don't want, I'm just getting ready to buy Andrew a referee shirt and a whistle.
So Patty Fiore has asked to come. Whether someone's coming with her, I don't know. Whether there will be others interested, I don't know, Tim. I mean, you know, it could be. Michael's going to be gone. He's going to be in Rome. I've also suggested to him that he meets with us at 5 o'clock on May 4th. So I've invited him to come right before town meeting just to talk to us. So we hear where he's coming from as far as his 2 goes. So I'm giving him every chance I can to hear from him.
Are we still just going to vote on those at the town meeting, Kathy?
Well, we can hear Patty, and if we're ready to vote
Okay.
after we talk to her, we can vote. I just don't want to vote till we hear from her, right?
Yes, no, I just meant
Please.
Michael's too. If he was coming that day, we're going to wait until then. It sounds
If
like.
he hasn't replied yet to my email, so if he replies and says, yes, I'd like to see you guys at 5:30, I said 5:30 on the 4th, then we can wait and hear from him. I think out of respect we should. Right?
Is there, real quick, sorry, Kathy, is there a reason we're not voting on the noise bylaw at this point? Send us out here, but
Well, they were still tinkering around with it until even I think Tuesday night, right? AP. I didn't hear the select board meeting, but I think
Yeah.
maybe Marcy. So I think they were still
Got it.
changing some language as far as Tuesday night. So I was just trying to get the final version so we know what we're voting on in case there's something in it that really bothered us.
got it. What I keep not understanding here for whatever reason, the 4/11/22 at 12 p.m. is not actually the final version. So forgive me.
And again, when there is an updated version, it should be sent out. I don't care if we get an email every 3 hours.
Or posted, and then we get a alert from
Yeah.
OneDrive saying you got a new doc version. So okay. I think that's it for the night. AP
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
roll call vote. Eric,
Aye.
AP,
Aye.
Marcy,
Hi.
Timothy,
Aye.
Cook is aye. So Claire 5-0. Good night, Claire. Thank you guys.
Good night, all.
Good night, everybody.